Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and tonight we have a workshop to do three things. We have the Lakes and Water Quality Committee, we have the Planning Commission, and then if we have time, we're going to have Chief Hegler provide a fire report at the end. If not, excuse me, if not, we'll get that rescheduled. So let's start with the Lakes and Water Quality Committee. Again, for those that aren't familiar with it, we do this rather informally. Before we start, I want to bring one point up real quick. I didn't see it in here. The council, when they created the committee, said that the residents of the various lake associations would pick their members. Are the people tonight, were they selected by those organizations, by the various lakes that they're asking to represent? All right. Cindy, just for the record.
Yeah, Cindy Patnode, City Clerk. That was not part of the application. I didn't put that in for them. So they just volunteered themselves for this part.
Two of them are already on.
Yep.
And there's one.
And then Brian, I didn't get an RSVP back, and I didn't have time to call him today. And he was the one that, he's by Carl Cray Lake is what it looks like, but that's not one of the 7.
So we could actually put him on for that area,
Yeah.
since that was the intent of when the council created that committee. I just want to do this right. I don't think we need to go through, the point I'm trying to get to here is if these were picked by their lake associations to be their representative, then I think the council just needs to go ahead and appoint them unless the council has questions that they want to ask.
So that was the goal, but there was a lot of difficulty getting people to even get that far. So whoever showed up before is basically who got appointed.
All right, so
I don't know.
as long as we tried, these people have volunteered, I have no problem with that. I just want to make sure that we used and complied with what the council said. So let's go ahead and begin. Did you have a question?
Well, that was my question because of the fact that it is a volunteer type situation where it's not appointed. And we were actually looking for people to represent each lake. I was kind of hoping we could just have all 3.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. That was, I think, the spirit and the intent when the council created the committee. So, Mr. Vogt, would you have any issues with that?
No. As a matter of fact, the gentleman that's missing, he would be the only person from Lake Auburn, I believe.
Okay, I think I saw that also. Mr. Gregory, any issues with that?
No, I have no problem.
Okay, so because we're short on time, tonight we have
Eggers.
Craig, you want to take just a minute? Is there anything you want to say real quickly?
I'll just give you a few minutes.
Sure.
I stand here at the podium.
Name and address for the record, please.
Craig Eggers. I live on Lake Virginia, 610 Virginia Shore Circle. I've been there 30 years, built a home 30 years next month. And during that time, I have been one of the organizers of our Lake Association and also served 4 years on the LMCD board and retired. I'm 77 years old, by the way, and retired when I was 62, which was far too early. And as a result, I needed something to do after retirement. And so I became a consultant for Rapala. And Rapala is the largest fishing manufacturer in the world. And I'm an avid fisherman. And so I'm paid to fish, folks. And you can't
How do
beat
you
that.
get a gig like that?
And everyone wants my job when I retire, but it'll be a while. As a result, I'm on the lake, ice or water, about 200 times a year. 200 days a year. And I know everyone on the lake. There are 42 homeowners on our lake, and I literally know everyone. And I am very aware of what's happening with the lake and of what's happened over the last 30 years. When 30 years ago we had no exotics, no milfoil, no coontail, it was just a clean lake. And I watched it grow, or I should say over 30 years, become quite saturated with exotics. Years ago, I worked with the city and the council and with the DNR, and the city at that time did allow us some monies so that we could treat part of the lake, and we did it for about 4 or 5 years, and it was somewhat successful. Then I organized a lake and talked to most of the residents whereby they are paying for their own lake shore. Not all of them, but many of them do that, and it's helped somewhat. Although there's just no way to clean the weeds out of the lake entirely, and we'll never be able to do that. But we're trying our best to do what we can. Secondly, as an advisory board committee member, we're trying to, I thought last time at our meeting we had a great idea to really adopt a storm drain, for example, so that everyone who is aware of storm drains being plugged or clogged can identify it, will know where it's going into what lake, and perhaps keep that clean. Also, trying to control grass clippings in the street, which eventually wash down the storm drains, which again contribute, of course, to the phosphorus buildup in the lakes and so on. Virginia also, of course, it drains Minnewaska and Lake Tamarack. Both come into Virginia, and then, of course, into Lake Minnetonka. So we have somewhat of a problem there, too, in that we're getting phosphates and fertilizers from Lake Minnewaska, not from Tamarack, of course, but all that sediment washes into our lake. And we still yet have a nice lake. It's filled full of fish. We have a number of people who use it throughout the year, and we're just trying to maintain it that way. I'm an avid conservationist, and I'm out there trying to talk and work with people so we can control this, and hopefully we can do some good.
Super, thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's it. Any questions?
I have a question. Are you currently on the committee, or you're aspiring?
I am
to be
currently on the committee.
Okay.
That's correct,
Oh,
right.
good.
Right.
Good. So how deep is Virginia?
36 feet.
36 feet.
Right. It's no structure in that lake. There's a big hole sort of to the west and the south, and then it goes off, of course, into a shallower port on the north end, which becomes Shorewood at that point. I think probably the last block of the lake is Shorewood, actually, and not Victoria. But there is no access into Minnetonka via a boat, other than a canoe or a small, small craft of some
So
type.
is water going toward Minnetonka from the Minnewaska?
From Minnewaska, from Tamarack, through Virginia, and into Minnetonka.
So
That's
your
correct.
problems are stemming a lot from whatever's happening in Minnewaska.
Absolutely. Which probably has, 100 or 200 homes on it, of course. And all that drains right through Virginia and right into Minnetonka.
Oh, I bet you it has 500 or 600 homes on it.
You
Isn't
may
it
be right.
surrounded?
You may be right, Mayor. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, either way, it's a lot, exactly.
Yeah. But nevertheless, so we're doing what we can, and so on, and try to control the exotics in Virginia and work with it as best we can.
And what's your best fish? Is there northern bass and walleye? Is that it?
Everything from Minnetonka is in Lake Virginia. It all comes upstream in the spring. We have no structure in Virginia, so the walleyes come up from Minnetonka, and they try to get into Minnewaska, but they can't because of the railroad grade, and they spawn and come back out and go back into Minnetonka. Everything else stays there. It's a big musky lake because it's a very quiet lake, a lot of northerns, a lot of panfish, and it's a very good lake, very private lake almost. There are 6 slots I should say 6 parking slots for people there at the launch area, provided by the DNR. And other than that, it's used by, I would say during the week, there'll be 2 or 3 boats on the lake that come from outside the lake and so on. So it's a quiet lake.
Perfect. Any other comments?
The committee is newly formed, the Water Quality Committee. Are you happy with the direction they're going?
Very much so, yes.
Any
Tom, you've been there for a few times, and yes, there's a good group of people on there. I'm the oldest, as I am almost everywhere, but nevertheless, some good minds, and I think people are all dedicated and want to serve the community as best we can. And we're just an advisory board to the council, to you people. But we've got a good start. It's relatively new, just last year for the first time, but we got a good start.
It seems like we have some very knowledgeable people on that.
I think we do, yes.
Keep up the good work.
Exactly.
I beg your pardon?
Keep up the good work.
We're going to try. I'm going to be in the lake for a long time, I hope, at 77, as long as I can. But yes, it's very important to me and to all of the residents in the lake. We've got a good group of neighbors out there, a lot of young people, and they're all interested in conserving the lake and making it as clean as possible.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
You bet.
We,
Thanks, folks.
appreciate your willingness to serve the city.
Sure. Thank you.
I move that we appoint Brian Billings.
We're not making any.
Oh, we're going to do that in the council meeting? All right.
Okay,
So I'll have to save this till later.
okay.
Council, any last questions here?
What about the other,
Yeah, I don't think they're here.
Brian Billings isn't here?
Nope.
Nope. And Nolan?
Can't make it today.
Right,
He
he's,
still wants to,
Well, Brian Billings isn't on the committee,
correct.
but he wants to be, and he's Kelzer Pond.
Yes.
Carl Craig, is that the same thing?
No.
No, that's different.
No, Kelzer Pond's a,
Do we have the ability to add another member? Can we do that?
yeah.
Just curious.
The idea was originally to get all the lakes
Okay,
represented.
cool.
So, all right, any other questions, council? All right, so we'll save the appointments to the meeting, all right. Next, we're going to talk about the planning commission. We have 7 people for 5 slots. Planning commission, if you would come up.
Yeah, and just turn your name tags around.
All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, if you, yeah, please turn your name tags around. I think we'll just start on this end. Gentlemen, we all, as I stated before, we have a short amount of time. So I'd like you to come up, introduce yourself, name and address for the record, and then if you will, just hit some of the highlights. And then council, I would ask, so that we can have time for the fire report if possible. Let's minimize our comments. That said, don't be afraid to ask questions that we need to get asked, right? I just want to try to keep this going to see if we can keep on schedule. Terry, would you like to begin, please?
Terry Schwarting, 824 Arbor Woods Road. Fairly new to Victoria, obviously living in a new development over by Holy Family High School. I've been here about a year and a half. Came from Maple Grove for 12 years, and prior to that, Chicago. Spent a lot of time in office products, building out distribution transportation networks for Staples. But that kind of career kind of came to an end, so I kind of downsized out here to Victoria. I like the community. Working part-time right now at Wells Fargo as a teller for benefits. I'm 64 years old, but still want to do a lot. So in prior career, I traveled a lot. Never probably had the opportunity time to really, give back to the city. So, with a new beginning and a new opportunities, I'm available and would be very willing to participate, and help with the growth going to occur. And I think we just want to do it in a smart way for all of the residents of Victoria, and that's what I would like to participate in. Thank you.
A couple quick questions.
Sure.
Have you ever served on a planning commission before?
No, I have not.
What do you think the function, the main focus of the planning commission for Victoria should be?
I think the Planning Commission should be to help determine the right kind of growth, the right mix of growth, and assure that it's controlled growth, I guess, really. And it's not just the newness, but retaining the values that the city has. But I have no preconceived notions. But I think that's what the Planning Commission should be doing, making Victoria better.
Perfect, thank you.
I have a
Council.
question. In the resume that we were provided, it says, what do you feel are the most pressing issues for Victoria? And one of those that you listed was traffic flow during rush hours.
Yeah, I live
Okay,
right off of
we
18.
all know there's a
Yeah,
problem.
obviously on 5, and then also 18 with the school coming on to Bavaria.
So what do you think the city could do about that?
Well, I think the city would work probably with Carver County. I'm not sure what all the answers are. There's probably no easy answer. At some point in time, you have to expand 5, and maybe you have to expand 18 right by me through the dirt road. But I understand those discussions have been ongoing for quite a while. And the other thing I listed was really bike trails. We have some nice trails. We have the great Carver Park really close by, but not every neighborhood has easy connections for kids to get to those bike
Are you
trails.
saying we have a connection problem with some of our trails?
We do. We have nice access, but they're not all connected. Yeah. But yeah, there's no easy answer on the traffic, but I do see that as an ongoing issue that we need to try to find a solution for.
Thank you. Judy, Tom?
Actually, that was one of the things that I was wondering about as well, and definitely, working with the county and trying to figure all that out. I've been going through, because I'm a new council member, and I've been going through all of this, and there's a lot of studies they do. And
Yeah.
it does take a lot longer than I expect.
Right, yeah, so it's not easy.
All right, we should study how many studies we do.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
Mr. Gregory?
Okay.
I was on the parking task force, and one of the suggestions that came out of that was to send it to the planning commission and let them kind of give us suggestions, ideas, and monitor the parking. Any thoughts, considerations for some of our parking issues?
You know, not having been close to that, I think that would be a little bit tough for me to answer. But, you know, obviously, if that's an issue, then, you know, part of being on the planning commission is working with the other members and the team and trying to bounce off different solutions and alternatives. I'm not here to dominate the planning commission. I'm here to be an active participant with good sound judgment. That would be my role.
Fair enough. Perfect, thank you. Shane?
Good evening. I am Shane Blazer. I live at 8400 Allegheny Grove Boulevard. I signed up or am applying to be on the Planning Commission because my wife and family and I moved to Victoria in July of last year, so we're brand new to the community, brand new to this side of the Twin Cities, but it's a growing community. It's a place we want to raise our kids, and so being on the Planning Commission is just an opportunity to bring my skills and give back to the community as we raise our kids here.
Perfect. The same question. The what do you think the planning commission should be focused on?
I think it's the growth of the community itself, first of all. I think the plan that is laid out, the 2040 plan, is a strong plan. There's a lot of really good goals in there for the growth of the community and focusing on what the community's strengths are versus having it try to be something that it's not. And then the other one is looking at just the codes and the rules and making sure that, I wouldn't say the rules are dynamic and gray, but that they make sense for what the city is trying to do for its future.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Bolt?
You characterize the growth that's in our plan as aggressive growth. I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent. Why do you say, in your mind, why is it aggressive?
I think the reason I wrote that initially was because it's looking at more than doubling the volume of people over the next 20 years. However, after looking at the plan more in recent days and seeing the full plan as it's been posted, is the growth is pretty much in line with what's historically been happening. Being new to the community, first of all, seeing those numbers felt aggressive, but now that I see how far it's grown, last 5 or 6 years, it probably looks decent.
Thank you.
Judy?
Well, I moved here in 2001, 18 years ago, and there were 4,000 people. And now we're topping 10, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's aggressive. And we have a very strong plan to move forward and grow, and we're going to be bigger, supposedly, than Chaska at the end. So I think your idea of having a vision of growing and keeping everything in line is a good idea.
Thank you. Mr. Gregory?
Just in general, how did you choose Victoria?
It was close to the area where kids go to school, which is St. Hubert's.
And where did you come from?
I grew up in Burnsville, and then the last few years my wife and I have moved around for work, so this is where we finally decided to settle.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Council, any other questions? No.
Thank you.
John?
I'm John Iverson, 1032 Anthony Way, of course, here in Victoria, and I'm applying for the Planning Commission for a whole bunch of different reasons. One of which is that I have a need for civic involvement, and I do believe that I have an awful lot to contribute, and I think that I have some history that's very constructive to long-term planning. When I look at the overall plan for Victoria, we have a huge amount of acreage, and we have so many opportunities, And I think there's a whole bunch of things that are fairly predictable in terms of how the city does grow, and it will grow, and it will fill up. And originally I was in Eden Prairie, and went through the growth process of Eden Prairie. And there is very little land that's yet to be developed. Very small pieces. So this will, I think Victoria, if we're looking at an example of how we structure what we do, what we don't do, I think we can look at an Eden Prairie. I think we can look at some of the suburbs in the south of the river at the same time and use that as an example of everything. So I do have the added advantage that my wife is on the Park and Rec, and so I've been able to take a look at some of the long-term plans where, some of the developed areas, and yes, there is a problem with paths, isn't there? And trails. So that's been an issue. And I look at I look at the demand that Victoria provides for anyone who wants to come in, and I look at tax increment financing, and I look at it and I say, boy, I don't know. We have we're in demand. We have an area that they're interested in. So, why do we want to give away a bit of the store in the process? Is my view on that. I think it's a vehicle that we can use, but I think at the same time we just have some real, incredible opportunities for those that want to build. So.
Perfect, thank you. What would your priority be as far as what do you think the Planning Commission should focus on?
Well, certainly the overall plan, and the overall plan has to a large extent been developed. And I think that, how will, we know that from 2000 to 2019, an awful lot of stuff changed. Whatever we thought in 2000, that's not necessarily true today at the same time. So I think there's a lot of review. I think there's a lot of let's take a look at that again, and I think the diligence of the of the whole thing. I mean, I kind of relate to the farm that I have, and whatever was a good idea 2 years ago, you have to change. So I think the dynamic that I could offer would be let's look at change. Let's look at change in terms of what we're doing and what we have been doing.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Vogt?
Question.
Mm-hmm.
In the thing that's the line where you're asked to respond to what do you think the most pressing issues for Victoria are, you talk about major growth, which we all agree is happening, and controlling finances to attain those objectives. So, from a financial standpoint, in the environment of major growth, what do you think is the hot button? What do you think we need to concentrate on the most in terms of maintaining control of our finances?
Well, I think that's a complex question, and I think the answer is probably equally complex. But I do think that that keeping property tax in line, figuring out how to do that, because that'll determine how we grow, and I think the expenditures of the city at the same time. I'm on the HOA, which is a mini city council, quite frankly, a very mini city council. But it's all about the numbers, and it's all about if we increase fees too much, people are going to say, well, I don't know, let's take a look. So I think it's a constant reviewing of financially what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Thank you.
Judy?
I got lost in all that. There was something that you had said, but I kind of lost that thought.
Do you want to take a minute?
Yeah.
Mr. Gregory?
John, I've gotten to know you over the past few years, and one of your qualities that I see, and I think it's a valuable quality, you're not afraid to challenge the status quo. And from a planning commission member, I think that's a valuable quality. I think it lends a lot to good discussions, and I think the status quo sometimes needs to be challenged, and I see you being able to do that. We're in the middle of kind of wrapping up our 2040 plan. I don't know, have you had an opportunity to review some of that?
I have seen some of the drawings, and my wife and I have toured some of the areas that are scheduled for some pretty major growth. So I don't, I would say that I have minimal knowledge on what the 2040 is. I have an overall general view.
I'll ask the same question on the parking. The task force is going to recommend that the Planning Commission kind of take the lead on monitoring parking issues and making recommendations. Do you have any thoughts, considerations for parking challenges?
Whatever we do, we're going to create problems for someone, however it happens. I guess I look at, you can look at someone as close as Chanhassen and see what they did and see how they laid out, kind of their market area. And it's it's with growth, it's going to continue to be a problem. And the topic of a ramp has certainly been brought up, and that's something that some people agree with, some people disagree. I think when it gets to the practical, we got to do something. We can't say, we have a problem and we're not going to address it.
Thank you. Judy?
Okay. Well, thank you, because I really like that answer. When you were saying look at change, I wanted to see, what you meant by that. Is it open-minded, or are you trying to stay in certain parameters, or are you willing to look outside the box?
Well, yeah, certainly look outside the box. I read, not to go into a long story, but I read a book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And so it was a PhD that wrote the book. And one of the things that he talked about, do we know what 2050 looks like? Right. We think we do, but of course we don't. Right. So I think we anticipate what 2050 is going to look like, and as we're going from 2025 on up, we say, well, let's take a look, because here's what we thought we knew in 2019. Right. But do we still know what we... So I think that's kind of that would be my mental approach to it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. John?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. John Wickman, 8901 Deer Run Drive, resident of Victoria since October of 2000. If I'm appointed this evening, it'll be my second term. I started at a partial term, a full term. I'll keep my commentary short because you know your schedule's tight. So fire away, gentlemen and ladies.
The priorities for the Planning Commission, I mean, you've been on it, so what do you think the priorities should be?
Following the guidance of the 2040 comp plan, just keeping a level, open mind for the history of the people the things that have taken place in the past as we move forward with new guidance and the new rules and regs we're putting into place with new ordinances.
Expand a little bit on the ordinances.
We did a revamp of the ordinances under previous leadership. Now we have new leadership. Now we're doing a revamp of the ordinances, again, revisiting the PUD process versus a straight zoning process. So just constantly cleaning things up and moving forward from the Planning Commission side.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Vogt?
A couple questions. In your questionnaire, you mentioned that one of the concerns is parking, which everybody agrees. What would you do? What are your ideas as to what we could do to help our situation?
It's a challenge. We've only got so much real estate. We've got a lot of new growth, which is fantastic. We got a lot of new rooftops being opened up. We got some new businesses opening up. We've got a lot of options. Personally, I believe we need to put the parking where the people are. I don't believe people are going to want to walk down Starger Lake Lane in February and it's miserable to go to the post office. I would love to see something happen with the municipal lot along with the other parcel we have here in town, with the Gannon piece we've talked about. I think at some point it'd be nice to, I don't know how we're going to finance it, but put a scissor ramp there, double deck it up, stack it up. Again, we're going to have some major issues, I think, when the new restaurant opens up. I believe we have roughly 200 seats opening up here in a few months. The growth is great. I'm not 100% in agreement. The parking study just came out. I think there's some misguidance on it, but I think it's just driving through town. We need to put the parking where the people are.
So additional question. The city redid its zoning ordinance last year, as you know. And we went from a simple, ultra simple zoning and heavy use of PUD to where we've isolated 4 or 5 different zones, made it very vivid that we had different levels of zoning with the idea that PUD would be used judiciously. I mean, are you seeing that work out, or how's the new zoning ordinance working?
I think it's too soon to tell. If you look at the history of the community, it's been primarily all PUD. And toward the latter part of Ben's leadership and the staff, we moved away from PUDs more towards straight zoning, more transparency for the developers coming into place. New leadership tends to want to lead more towards PUD. There's still a lot of cleaning up of the ordinances. We were probably midstream on quite a few of the ordinances when the change took place. But I think it's too early to tell you exactly how I think it's working. There could be some clarity on the R1 versus R2. We're seeing a lot of people lean towards R2 versus R1 because it allows for a little more leniency as far as lot size. I'd like to see a little more clarity in R1 versus R2 to create some larger lots and not so many small lots as we're seeing pass through today in straight zoning.
Interesting. Thank you.
Just what I do.
Judy?
You've been on the Planning Commission for 2 terms now?
A partial term and a full term, and this will be my second full term, I believe.
Okay. And are you're wanting to stay on that, obviously, because you've applied again. Is there something in particular that you want to see happen while you're on the committee or commission, or is that you're so invested in it that you just want to keep going?
I'd love to get back to the community. I've been here for 19 years. I'd want to do something. I love real estate. I love the industry. I love growth. I love the studies. I love being part of that. I was part of the comprehensive planning committee. I'm involved with the Lions. I'm involved with many things in our community. If I would do anything moving forward, when you do make your appointments, please stagger the terms. It's very sad that we're losing 2 very tenured members at the same time. We're losing a lot of experience, a lot of tenure tonight.
Yeah, we're working on that. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
John, you threw out, thanks for your service, by the way, but you threw out a whole bunch of stuff there early on. A whole bunch of things popped into my mind, but a couple things. You kind of disagreed with some of the findings of the parking study, and then you also mentioned the Gannon property. One of the things the parking study was asked, and I found this interesting myself, was would you be in favor of eminent domain? Was one of the questions asked the task force, and on a 5-4 vote, it favored eminent domain. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Eminent domain is a process. It's expensive. It's got its place. I don't know that it's needed at this point. I think we have a lot of opportunity within the community right now to resolve some of our issues. And not that I completely disagreed with the parking study. What confused me is a lot of the parking study involved private property that we have no control over, and opened up, said we have ample places today. Well, some of those ample places to park today aren't publicly owned. So it's hard to, in my opinion, hard to include that in our study and saying that we have an okay issue. My top line view of the study as reviewed in the Planning Commission basically said we don't have an issue, everything's fine, but it's, as a member of this city and a member of the community working in town, it's not always okay. It's really difficult to find a place to park more often than not.
Okay. And one other thing, and this might be a little sensitive, but I feel obligated to ask. On Tuesday, there were, at the Planning Commission meeting, one of the topics was to selling 4 lots.
Yes.
And you recused yourself because you said you may have a conflict. And then 3 days later, and staff said this was a mistake, but your name ended up on the recommendations for to be the listing agent. Again, staff said that was a mistake. I was just wondering if you could shed any light on that.
I've been responding to staff over questions about the sale of the property. We've walked the lots, we've looked at lots. Just for my history, I've been in real estate since 1991. I've served in the community for a number of years, been in the community for a number of years, and I've just been assisting Pat with just guidance and direction and answering questions. The conversations come up that I may have the opportunity to list it, but no expectation. I'm just here to do what I do for this community and do for myself, and I'm here to help.
Fair enough, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Jared?
Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to do this. I'm Jarrett Kuhn. I live at 820 Interlaken up in Swiss Mountain. I've been a citizen of Victoria for the last 20 years. I've seen a lot of growth, a lot of changes in the city of Victoria over the time, and I guess I just want to serve my city that I've been part of for the last 20 years, and would like to join the Planning Commission.
Perfect. Same question. What would you say are the priorities for the Planning Commission? What should it focus
on? The focus should be, on growth, on controlled growth between business and residential, trying to blend the proper growth in so that the tax base can stay, proper and controlled. I've worked for an asphalt company, and we do driveways and streets across the metro area. I see a lot of different developments go in and how they're being put in, and I just would like to bring that expertise to the city of Victoria.
Thank you. Mr. Vogt?
The question, what are the most pressing issues facing Victoria? You just said what you just talked about, proper growth of the business and residential areas. So expand on that more. What exactly do you mean proper growth of the business and residential areas?
Well, I mean, our downtown area is semi-confined as far as how much growth can get through here. But I see more growth in the southern part of Victoria, down by County Road 11, and just want to be able to semi-control what's going to happen down there and work with the city of Chaska and to once County Road 11 gets developed and how much business we can get maybe focused down in that area.
Do you mean County Road 10, the east-west?
County Road 10 and 11, yeah.
Okay. Down there in that intersection.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you. Judy?
Okay. So when we were looking at our pie chart with how much the residents are paying in taxes compared to the amount of businesses that we have that are paying, we obviously are this much business and this much residents, and we need to expand that. Do you have any ideas on how we could get more business into and draw them here?
it's a really tough focus on Victoria based off of kind of how we're set up with kind of the lakes, and we don't have a big industrial area, and even in the 2040 plan there's not a big area set aside for that either. So it's it's more just expanding that business. Even if growing at 10% or 20%, we're not going to become a Shakopee or a Chaska or even a Chanhassen, because I don't think that's what's best for or what Victoria is really known for. I mean, people come to Victoria maybe to get away from some of that, side of it, and that's kind of why we kind of moved out here to Victoria from Chaska, was to get away from the traffic and all the people.
There's no traffic except for rush hour.
Well, I live up on Rolling Acres, and of course that's getting more and more traffic.
Yes. I was kidding.
Yeah.
Is that it? Mr. Krieger?
Jared, I know you've been attending a number of council meetings and everything, and I appreciate that, staying informed. I'm curious, do you have any thoughts on our 2040 plan? Is it good, bad, indifferent? Could we have improved somewhere?
A lot of work went into that. I wasn't part of that, but everything changes. I mean, the 2040 plan is going to change before 2040 gets here. And the only thing is it's a plan. It's ideal to have a plan for that. I don't know if there's a lot that you can change in it, because until things get annexed and people start selling land, it's hard to say where they're, what they're thinking they're going to sell their land for, or what purpose, but controlling that and saying this is what we'd like to see here is a good vision.
Just real quick, you do some blacktopping, and that's your kind of your forte. Do you work with any other municipalities or?
We don't actually, we don't work for the cities. I mean, this stuff we do for cities is more pathways, tennis courts, that type of sports courts.
Gotcha.
We don't get in. We get into private roads and work with, developers and then do the driveways for different builders throughout the city.
Thank you.
Okay, just real quick, you would recuse yourself if your company would be interested in doing work with the city that you were involved with on the Planning Commission?
Yes, I personally don't do any bidding for the city of Victoria.
Perfect. Council? All right, thank you. John? Name and address, please.
Yeah, turn that up. My name is John Brownlee, 757 Alley Lane in Victoria. We've lived here for 15 years, just about, almost 15 years. And prior to building our house in Victoria, we lived in Chaska, over on the Chaska Town Core, so we literally moved about a mile into Victoria. We're right on the corner. We're on the edge. Can throw a baseball across to Chaska. Went to college here in Minnesota at Bethel University, but I'm originally from the West Coast, where my family used to do residential development. So I kind of grew up in a family of developers. So know enough to be dangerous about the some of the issues that relate to planning commissions. I serve on a couple other commissions. Medical Alley Association is a group in Minnesota that works on behalf of medical device and medical technology companies. I'm the CEO of a healthcare technology company. So I serve on a couple of commissions for them, and also an urban development organization called Banyan Community, which works in the south side of Minneapolis and urban development. The approach that I bring to this commission is really the same as I use in my business, and that's ask a lot of questions, really rely on data to get a lot of the answers, spend a lot of time engaging with stakeholders and find out really what's going on the ground. So we've talked about parking. Everybody's talking about parking. My wife and I were sitting out here the other day, at Ruby's Roost having coffee and looking around saying, what's going to happen when this amazing new restaurant opens, right? I mean, it's going to be awesome. We can't wait. We're going to be the first ones in line. We're super excited. But it's going to be a really significant challenge. And I think the city is going to have to think about from a dollars and cents standpoint where we're going to put our money to invest directly or indirectly in solving the problem of parking, right? I mean, it's something that we all love this place. That's why we live here, and we got to figure that one out, or else the business base isn't going to grow. I'm worried about not just the parking, but the business itself, because if they're not able to sort out the issues that they're going to have with parking, it's going to have an effect on their customers' satisfaction and so forth. So that's a big issue. We have this. I'm really bullish on this new development, this Bethesda development, because my parents would like to move back to Victoria. They would be perfect for that facility. I want to ask a ton of questions that I didn't get detail on in some of the documentations about how we're going to finance that, how they're going to finance that, the economic viability of that project, and what role the city plays. So I'm a guy who asks a lot of those kinds of questions, and I'm here to serve if I'm selected to be on the commission.
Perfect, thank you. Same question. What do you think the priority should be for the Planning Commission?
Well, I think the Planning Commission, as I understand it, is sort of an advisory role, not necessarily making final decisions, but making advisory recommendations to you all. And so I think how we invest in new development, in particular private development and public development for that matter. And somebody mentioned the TIFs that we've done in the past, and that we'll look at doing in the future. I've been reading a lot about that issue lately because it's not something I'm certainly an expert on. And there's a lot of cities that are really struggling with that issue right now in terms of how those are used and how effective they are. So I think that's one of them. And if I could do nothing else but help bring some creative ideas and solutions to the parking issues, I know my wife would be really happy with me, and so that would be an added benefit because we come down to downtown Victoria all the time, but we usually do it on our bikes. That's not an option that's available to everybody, so we're going to have to figure that out. So.
Thank you. Mr. Volt?
Question, again, looking at the question posed to you, what do you feel are the most pressing issues facing Victoria? You made some good comments, but you finished by saying, I would like to be an independent voice for this progress. So you pulled out the word independent. So give me the context of that.
So I've never been involved in any government body. Never been particularly interested in doing that. I got interested in what was happening here, obviously, like we all have the residents over the last couple of years, and I said, I got to sort of figure out what's going on here. And I called the mayor, and we went out and had coffee, and then I called Councilman Crowley and went and had coffee with him. I had wine, he had coffee. And just try to sort of learn the perspectives of the people that were involved. My sense is that there are sides in a lot of the things that have taken place. I'm not on one of them, and I don't have a horse in the race. So that's what I meant is the data and the facts on the ground will tell us in a lot of ways what the right answers are, and the more we get, I think, voices involved that are interested in using those metrics as opposed to things that have happened in the past, we're better off, probably. We all love the city. Everybody does, no matter what side they're on. That's why we're here. That's why you all serve. So that's really what I meant.
Okay.
I'm a really transparent, independent person. That's why I run a company rather than work for a company. And so those are things that I value.
Okay. Thank you.
Judy?
Yes, I understand that because I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I'm independent, so I'm constantly asking what the rules are. So I get in trouble.
Right.
When you were
just keep pressing them until somebody tells you have to stop. That's kind of the entrepreneur's creed.
Look at that. He's like, oh God, don't tell her that.
Well, you asked about thinking outside the box earlier. You know, that's.
And that's one of the things that I do, which sometimes I throw stuff out there and they kind of look at me, and other times they think about it. And I am looking to have people on the commission that does think outside the box and have creative ideas instead of having to do things a certain way just because that's the way it's been done.
Right.
So I just wanted to know how you felt about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Jared, right? Jarrett said, made a really good point that there's a lot of great stuff in the 2040 plan, but I mean, I run a company, I can't fathom, making a plan that involved the date 2040, right? I mean, so much is going to change between now and then, 2-3 years from now.
Right.
And so you have to have sort of a bench of ideas to work with, or else you get stuck, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
John, I was very impressed with your resume. I think all of your life experiences would lend itself well to our planning commission. But one thing that jumped out to me was you mentioned you come from a family of developers. Just could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so my dad built houses, spec homes on the Oregon coast. And then he was trying to lure me back to Oregon from Bethel when I was graduating, and we started a company together, manufacturing building materials for the developers on the Oregon coast. There was an unmet need there, roof trusses, really exciting stuff like that, wall panels, windows, et cetera. And so I spent a lot of years with him. He built 3 houses for our family. I helped him do that, and then he built houses for other people as well. And so, I mean, it's not sort of commercial real estate development like building apartment complexes and things like that, but there was enough in there that was governed by zoning and things like that.
Well, we're losing a member, Tom Treathart, who seems to know and understand building very well, and I think that's going to be a loss. And having somebody that understands.
Well, I don't want to sell myself as an expert in building construction, but I've done a lot of it.
Just having an idea of what it takes to put together a house, I think is a valuable tool for that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Last but not least, Chris.
Hello, Chris Boyk, 2365 Island Point, Watermark South neighborhood. Moved here about 2.5 years ago with my wife, Taryn. We were living, just on the west end of Chanhassen. And you asked one of the guys earlier, how did you end up here? And I'd say that we both grew up in rural areas. I grew up in southern Minnesota. She grew up in rural Nebraska. And living in Chanhassen, we used to visit Victoria. We'd come over here and have dinner or take our bikes out on the trails. And fell in love with it. It's a charming little city. I work nearby in Eden Prairie at United Health Group. She works in Chaska at the Alina Clinic. And we felt like it was the best of both worlds, being in a small town and yet still being super close to the city. We loved it, and we kind of set out a plan to move and found a great house, and we love it here. My interest in serving on the Planning Commission is to learn more about city planning. I'm interested in it. I think Victoria has a great little downtown. I think it should be preserved. I think we should encourage growth in a way that preserves the feeling that it has, encourage residential development that preserves what we all love about the city.
Perfect, same question.
I think it's a great question. Obviously, I have the advantage of having 6 people go ahead of me, so I just start repeating the best points and looking around.
That's honesty.
Right. No, I've seen a couple great ideas. I think I was in one of the meetings on the 2040 plan, and I like the ideas around redeveloping the old city maintenance facility. I think that that's a huge opportunity along the lake there. I think that there's a number of I'll call them underutilized properties, in the downtown. When we're here in the downtown area for events like the Classic Car Nights, you look at how the people flow and where they walk, and you see people relatively congregated in a 2 or 3 block stretch, and we have much more area in downtown. And I think about when I'm down here, how do we create a downtown that would span, twice that area, 3 times that area in a walkable fashion. And you think about that, creating that walkable fashion, you think then you get the businesses that span, further to the east and maybe in some of the underutilized lots there on the west end as well. I also think it would be worth looking at how do we expand business development south of Highway 5. So, potentially over by the Holiday Station and the car lot there.
Thank you. Mr. Vogt?
A couple questions. First of all, I'm glad to hear you're interested in the downtown area. As a matter of fact, your responses are zeroed in on that, and I think it's music to my ears. We've recently upgraded Steger Lake going to the east, which should help pushing development to the east a little bit. But we also have, as you know, the 13 acres to the west. So what do you know, what have you kept up with that 13-acre issue? What do you think about the development to the west?
So I haven't, are you talking about the Lutner well lots or which?
No, we're talking about the money, the land behind the Dairy Queen coming back this way to Wensman.
I haven't kept up with that.
You haven't kept up. Okay.
But it is funny, as you asked the other 6 about what they put on their applications, I was racking my brain trying to remember exactly what I listed. So I zeroed in.
That's thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so you're talking about some other properties that are being underutilized. Could you give me an example?
Well, so I would say the Lutner well lots right behind the new development with the Noble Lion and Floyd's there. As you go down towards Enki, I mean, as you pass the apartments and go towards Enki, there's, short of the other Waconia Dodge dealership there, there's not much development on that end either.
Okay. I thought Lutner was behind,
Behind us this way.
Yeah.
It's across from Floyd's.
yeah, okay.
Behind, right?
So you're thinking that we should offer to buy his property?
Well, so I think that that's an idea. I mean, the idea of eminent domain came up earlier, and I wouldn't be a supporter of eminent domain unless there was a real public need for that. But I think that there's opportunities with the houses that are back there to expand, which would be to the west of the apartments, behind Floyd's. If we're looking at business expansion opportunities, we start to look at what kind of business we want to encourage and
Okay,
move the industrial further out.
okay, thank you.
Chris, you mentioned, expanding our businesses and things down Steiger. I have a vision for that, and I'm just curious if you've thought about it at all, what types of businesses or how do you envision us developing east of City Hall?
So I think that there's a couple things I have in my mind. I think that area, especially around the old maintenance facility, would be good for hospitality. I mean, you could have, restaurants, bars. I also think that there's an opportunity for, like a mixed office facility where it would be almost directly east of this building in those next couple lots. That would be, a prime candidate. When one of the guys earlier was asked, how do we get more businesses here? Create those type of landing places.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
To all the candidates, appreciate it. The council will discuss when we get into the council meeting. Andrew, you got a minute. I think we should probably reschedule you.
That's right.
Okay. Dana, would you take that offline and find out when we can come back? All right, we're going to just take a real quick break. We've got some more people settling in, so we're going to start the council meeting. We may start it just a few minutes late to give people a chance to sit down. So to all the candidates, thank you for taking your time and applying.
Thank you very much.
I call to order the March 25th, 2019 meeting of the Victoria City Council. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, folks, we've got a lot here tonight. The first thing I want to do is on the agenda. Dana, anything?
Nothing.
I've had a request. We have a lot of people here for the Marsh Lake Road Council. I would like to suggest that a lot of these people have kids at home, and that we move the Marsh Lake Road discussion up to as soon as we finish with the consent agenda. So we just changed that order. Is council any discussion? Any argument?
Nope.
All right. So I'll do the motion. Oh, go ahead.
Just if the visitor presentation could be before the Marsh Lake Road, they've just, the Haney's.
Okay.
That'll only be 2 minutes.
So I move that we move the, which item is it here? Item 8B to occur immediately after the visitor's presentation and before the public hearing for the Bethesda rezoning. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. So that is now. All right, so we've moved that. Dana, Dana, council, any other changes to the agenda?
None from staff.
Go ahead.
We're not to the consent agenda yet, so I would make a motion there.
Okay, that's fine. I move we adopt the amended agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Open forum. I've got a lot of slips here. I need to let people know. Dana, which item is it? Which is the one we have to delay again?
That would be item number 6A.
Okay. So we're going to get to that one in a minute. For the slips related to 6A, we're going to have to take that off the agenda. We'll get to that in a minute. I have a lot of other slips for the open forum that are all related to 8B. We'll hold those until we get to that item. And I think that's it. So other than those items, is there anybody who wants to address the council on anything other than 8, A, B, or C? Those are where I have slips. Okay, seeing none. Open forum, we've covered that. Consent agenda. Mr. Vogt?
I make a motion to remove item F, fitness equipment for the rec center.
Council, any objections?
No.
Also like to pull,
Okay, go ahead.
like to pull item B, claims roster, and item C, liquor license for Winchester and Rye.
Okay, so let's do these one at a time to make it a little easier. Mr. Vogt, did you want to pull it and discuss item F, or do you want to postpone that?
I would like to briefly discuss, I think.
Okay, so you want to pull and discuss it?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else, staff?
None from staff.
Public, anything for the consent agenda? Okay, I move that we pull items 4B, 4C, and 4F for immediate discussion after the rest of the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so those items we'll discuss, and I think I actually will go back. I move that we approve the modified consent agenda for those items that are not being pulled, and then we'll immediately get into the discussions of the items that were pulled. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so the others are approved. The first item, Mr. Gregory, 4B, claims roster. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Bose, for page 7, we've got an invoice or a paid slip for Kenny Graven for open meeting law litigation for $766.50. Just a quick explanation.
Sure, Mayor and Council, Council member, thanks for the heads up about that. I didn't have a chance before the meeting to look at the particular time that was entered under that, but that item, that descriptor has been open meeting law litigation and related matters, and the related matters referred to the AG opinion request on conflicts back a year or more ago, and then more recently, the Department Administration request for data regarding social media. So it's become, that's an overbroad file number. So I will, one, find out what the time is that you're referring to, and then number two, rename that file to be more exact. So I appreciate that.
Very good. Any other questions?
Nope.
I'll make a motion, we approve claims roster as written.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Item 4B is approved. Item 4C, Mr. Gregory.
Couple things, and I see we added a visitor presentation, which is fine. So just a couple points. In the staff report, it talks about Winchester Rye is going to be looking for a liquor license approval up to 230 seats, and talking about 2 outdoor seating areas, and just a kind of a when the visitor presentation starts, just kind of give us a visual or an explanation of where those outdoor seatings areas are and how large they are, how many seats they are, and a point to the council or a question to the council. When we approved this back in October of 2017. We approved a restaurant for 3,500 square feet, and it looked as if it was about 185 seats, give or take 5 or 10. Now we're being asked to approve a liquor license up to 230 seats with outdoor seating, and this isn't just for Winchester and Rye. This is kind of a question or statement for all of our restaurants. All of our restaurants utilize outdoor seating. Victoria House, Vic's, Noble Lion, School of the Wise, everybody utilizes outdoor seating. And that outdoor seating puts extra pressure on our parking issues. And my question to the council, I think there should be a mechanism when we're approving these sites and restaurants that at least a percentage or a fraction or some amount of outdoor seating should be calculated when we're figuring out how much parking we need for these restaurants, because now we're going from a 185-seat restaurant to 230-seat restaurant. And it seems reasonable that at least some of those seats should be added in when we're calculating parking needs. Any thoughts, consideration?
Yeah, let me jump in here. If the council approved 3,500 square feet with 185 seats, and if I'm not mistaken, the shared parking ordinance bases the number of required parking spots on the size of the restaurant as it's written now. If we're adding more space, it seems to me the conclusion would be there'd be more shared parking requirements that would go with this. Do we know whether these seats were included when the council originally approved it or not? Was that checked?
I'd have to go back and look at the plans that were approved, Mayor.
All right, it's been a while since I read the shared parking ordinance. I don't recall ever seeing anything about outdoor seating, and given the winter we just came out of, there's no question that people are not going to be sitting outside in February. We also have other outside seating in other businesses already. Victoria House, Vic's, School of the Wise, Noble Lion, all have outdoor seating. I think we need to have before we approve this, I think we need to know whether or not there's an issue here. And if we're adding additional space, given everybody's concerns about parking, I think we need to clarify this. And I'm not sure, Bob, how this works as far as if the ordinance is silent on it, which I assume it is. And I don't know if these other outdoor seatings were done even before the shared parking ordinance came into effect 10 years ago. So I don't know what the legal challenges or concerns would be in this particular regard. And so I think we need to have an answer to that before this item is actually reviewed and approved by the council, so we know where we sit, what's the requirement, what the requirements are, especially with the concerns about parking. Mr. Vogt?
The question is, this outdoor seating, is it in a patio format, or is it on the roof? What kind of outdoor seating is it?
It's on the patio, so first level.
Okay, so it's outdoor off the first floor.
Correct.
It's not,
They talked about 2 areas. Is there other areas as well?
I haven't seen the building plans, but that's what my understanding is on the outdoor, on the first level.
At one, I think they also talked about rooftop. Now, I don't know if that's included here, and it's obviously been a while since it was in front of the council. You don't know off the top of your head whether...
The second floor is approved for office use.
Okay. So as far as you know, there's nothing on the rooftop being planned? It's just around on the first floor?
Correct.
Okay. Council, I would move that we delay the approval of this until such time as we get an expedited review. I don't want to slow them down, but I want to get I would suggest we get an expedited review both by Mr. Vos and staff to find out where we sit and what the requirements may be and what options are available to the council.
Can I just say something?
Yep, go ahead.
When they have outdoor seating, it's only seasonal, and there's only a certain amount of time in the entire year that people are going to be sitting outside. And odds are, when we do have that time, the restaurant inside will probably be empty, and they'll be sitting outside. If you ever notice when they have outdoor seating in restaurants, like even at Floyd's, when you walk in, everybody's in the back on the patio. They're not inside the restaurant. So it's not like they're using the restaurant and the patio in those particular times. So I don't know if it's good. So you're going to have to do that with Floyd's and Vic's and Victoria House and.
Right, but I disagree with the statement that the inside's not used just because people are sitting on the
Well,
outside.
I'm not saying, but not to capacity.
Well, I would disagree with that too, but I think the key here is we need to have a consistent standard applied, and we don't know what's happened in the past. What the council approved in 2017 was 3,500 square feet and 185 seats. They're now talking in the staff report, was it 237? Can you bring up the staff report? 230 seats? So there's clearly a delta there.
Yeah, that I would question.
Right, and I wouldn't disagree that if you look at the shared parking ordinance, which businesses are required to pay $5,000 in, I think people know that I have a lot of problems with the shared parking ordinance. It costs the city roughly $25,000 to build a parking space, but yet the shared ordinance only charges businesses $5,000. The last thing I think we need to do is, if in fact the ordinance says, hey, you got to pay based on square footage, and they're adding square footage, even if it's only temporary, I think we need to consider that. And I wouldn't be opposed to reasonableness, which means if it's only used 6 months out of the year, figure out what it would be on an annual basis and then cut it in half, because they can only use it for 6 months. But the point is I think we need to make this an agenda item, let people think about it, provide comments. I don't think we can approve this now, because this is basically changing what the council approved for the number of seats and our shared parking that was assigned to that, which I think was 20,000, right? 4 spaces. Pat, do you remember?
Yes, that was the fee.
Okay. So, go ahead.
Before we vote on this, I was wondering if we could get comments from the Heaney's, just any thoughts, consideration. Would this put us behind schedule at all? It would. I really would like to know that.
Yep, it will.
I mean, could you step up and just kind of give us a little, and describe a little bit of what you think the outdoor seating is going to look like and how many seats? Just
Well, it was
please, we need to get you.
And the microphone, my voice.
Name and
My
address for
husband?
the record.
You bet.
Hi.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I'm Kevin Heaney.
I'm Kim Heaney, 2285, or you want the restaurant? 7929 Victoria Drive?
That's fine, thank
Okay, beautiful. It was approved for the seating outdoor when we turned in for the Whack and Sack into the city. It had 25 plus, so up to 29 seats for outdoor. So the front patio would have 5 tables of 4. The back, really, we said 5 seats, but nobody's going to be sitting out there. It's more of an outdoor space to come out as far as to smoke more than anything. So that's why we said up to 30. But it was already pre-approved when we did this.
Right.
We're trying to do our open by May 1st.
Okay.
Yep.
So was this in the total parking that we've documented in the original request?
It should have been. The only thing I could think about where the numbers are coming into play is where that lounge area is. It's a sofa, so I think we were counting the seats, even though you don't sit there. It's just to eat there. It's to enjoy a cocktail. It's more of like sofas, chairs, not actual dining tables.
So I don't think the parking was based on the number of seats. I think it was based on the square footage. So the square footage, I want to make sure I understand what you said. Is the square footage that was approved in October 17 include this outdoor seating? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it was listed on as far as the Whackensack, everything that was approved was on there, and at the very bottom, it shows outdoor seatings.
Okay, so
I should have got
I'm
that
somewhat
form in here.
confused then. So why does the staff report then have a different number than what was approved by the council before? There's
Because
something that's not adding
I
up.
turned the numbers in when I went to fill in this form, and I started adding how many people could sit on the couches. So I'm wondering if that's where this is getting elevated, which it could be. But nobody can dine at those tables. They're basically just to sit at.
So the next meeting is April 8th.
Well, that-
This is just approving the liquor license.
Yep.
I don't see how this would delay your opening if we waited just to get this researched and confirmed to make sure we're
Well, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't it, then we have to turn this in, it takes another 3 weeks in order to go through the county and the state? Is that true? That's what I think.
I don't know.
It could take up to 3 weeks, correct?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, there's a processing time. I guess I don't know exactly how long the state is taking right now, but yeah, there's a period of time after city.
So then that would push us right to the
I'm
very
concerned
end.
about parity here. All the restaurants in town have outdoor seating. This is the first time I remember having a discussion about the outdoor seating specifically. Is our policy on parking even clear on outdoor seating?
Well, I think that's really what this is just.
Right, but I'm
exposed.
interested in parity. If we're putting these people into a standard that doesn't exist, that we just thought of, we've abruptly pulled the chain down on them. I just worry about what we've done, the precedent that we've had in the past, and the fact that our policy doesn't address it. So what water, these are murky waters we're going into here, and at their expense.
No, Councilmember Vogt, you're stating exactly my concern, and that's not the reason I brought it up. I didn't bring it up to pick on you. I brought it up to address all of the restaurants. All of the restaurants, I think, are putting extra pressure on parking, and is that something we should be considering? And I hope you don't feel like I was picking on you, because I'm not. Because personally, I mean, if you said, 4 tables out in front, 4 or 5, I don't consider that a huge deal, and I'm not, and I don't want to, put extra pressure on you. But I do think it should be a consideration when we're talking about all of our restaurants in town, when we're talking about parking. It should be something that we should consider in the future, and I agree, I don't think it's fair to put Winchester Rye out on a limb when we allow this for everybody else, and we don't factor that in for anybody else. So it wasn't my intention to single you folks out, but just to bring it up as a topic of discussion.
Right.
And if it feels like it's going to delay, I guess I'd be in favor of approving this tonight. I don't want to delay.
Yeah, the intention here is not to make you comply with a standard that is different than everybody else. But clearly, when you look at the numbers, as we're being asked to vote on this, something wasn't adding up, right? And I think we need to bring these kind of issues up so that we can get these resolved. So I don't want to delay you either, but at the same time, I don't want the city. We already have enough parking problems. We've talked about this, and it will be talked about much, much further, right? The ordinance is there is to try to get money to put into the parking fund. Given the fact that this is being clearly applied indiscriminately in the sense of all of the people that have outdoor seating now, and this issue has never come up, I don't want to unfairly single you guys out, right? So I'm not opposed to approving this, but I think what we've found is this is a real issue that we need to fix, far as I'm concerned, I think the shared parking ordinance needs to be rescinded or completely rewritten. So I don't want to put your opening in jeopardy, and I don't want you to be singled out compared to the others. But I think from this discussion, it's pretty obvious, Dana, that we need to look at this, and the sooner the better, because I don't think we need to have this same discussion later. So I have no problem going forward. Council?
With that, I make a motion to approve a resolution to approve on-sale Sunday liquor license for Haney's Incorporated, trade name Winchester Rye, at 7929 Victoria Drive, Victoria, Minnesota, 55386, from April 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2019.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Dana, we need to, I think, expedite a review of this and figure out what, as soon as we can, get it back to the council for further discussion. Thank you.
You bet.
Point of clarification, Mr. Mayor. Just so I know what I'm bringing back to council, a review of the parking ordinance as it relates to how patio space or outdoor seating
Correct.
is.
Correct. That's the specific point that was brought up here. The broader discussion of the shared parking ordinance, I think we can maybe tackle both at the same time, but take a look at it and get back to the council if you would. Is that clarified?
It's clarified.
Perfect. Last item, Mr. Vogt, this was item 4F. Go ahead.
Which was the request, the approval of replacement equipment for the fitness area at the rec center. And the reason for the discussion is the recommendation is that we purchase 14 pieces of strength equipment and 18 pieces of cardio equipment with a total purchase price of $133,695 to be leased over a 4-year lease with a buyout of $146,204. In other words, we've elected to lease this equipment and pay $11,000 more for it in 4 years. Now, we have historically done a lot of leasing, and there's reasons for it, especially for the cardio equipment. But what I look at here is that the reason that I know the rec area did this is because of cash flow. In other words, they don't have $134,000 in the budget for this year, and therefore, in order to make this work, they would lease it, so they're spending $36,000 a year for 4 years. And my point is, there is a maintenance fund which is substantial. I think probably in the neighborhood of $1 million.
Correct.
And there's good reasons for this maintenance fund. There's all kinds of work that's out there in the future for the rec center, including a new roof. But $11,000, we're going to discuss the American Disabilities Act later in this meeting, where the city is going to be on the hook for all kinds of improvements to street corners, streets, sidewalks, buildings, to comply with the American Disabilities Act. So I'll give you an example. To repair a street corner and make it compliant, it's somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000. But there's probably places in the rec center that need compliance. Is that true?
To some respect, yes.
Okay. Well, $11,000 would help us fix 4 street corners, just as an example. So I think my recommendation would be is that we do a loan from the maintenance fund to buy this equipment now, save the $11,000, and pay the maintenance fund back over 4 years. So basically,
Save the interest.
Save the interest, save the fact that, save $11,000, which can be put to good use. And that there should be proper documentation. This is completely transparent. This is a temporary loan. But there's no reason that we have $1 million in the bank and we go out and lease equipment and blow $11,000.
What's the total cost to purchase this?
Total cost, if we purchase this, is $133,695.
Council, discussion?
makes a valid point. I mean, if we've got the money that we can finance it and then they pay it back, pay the monthly payment back to the account, I don't see why we wouldn't do that.
I remember discussing this in the finance committee meeting, it was probably a year ago, year and a half ago, and I knew we had that fund because of roofs and other expected expenses. Do we know how much that fund has in it in terms of, or in relation to the expected expenses?
Mr. Mayor, Council, the facility asset review that we had done, it's been about 5 years now, identified immediate, short, and long-term, and there's several $1 million worth. I mean, if you look at the life of a building. So the goal was to establish this fund through access budget, also putting money into it as we move along to deal with that long-term, out 50 years. The fund has today about $1,093,000 in it, but I know over time there was several million. But again, we're looking at a really long period of time, 20, 30, 40, 50 years out.
So how much money do you need in the next 4 years?
My initial response would be there's going to be a new roof that's going to be needed on there within that time period. And you're probably looking at $500,000 for that. So we're probably in the $750,000 over the next 4 years of upgrades and improvements.
So you don't think that if the council bought this equipment, it's not going to impact or affect any of the planned maintenance, at least what you think you're going to have to deal with over the next 4 years?
No, I don't think so, it would.
Okay, and is this funded through transfers, or is this funded as a portion of the fees that are paid?
This
maintenance fund.
So we allot a certain dollar amount into the fund, and I don't know what that dollar amount is, but I know any excess budget that is revenue or expenditures that are not spent also go into this fund. So that's how it's grown over the last 5-6 years.
So,
And could you highlight some of the advantages to leasing?
So one of the things that we looked at was the initial budget dollar amount. That $133,000. Previous councils and staff looked at that and said, if we can lease it at a shorter dollar or with a lesser dollar amount, it wouldn't have that impact on the budget on a one-time deal. Plus the cardio equipment, the treadmills and the steppers, usually their life is about 4 years, and then we turn around and replace them. So that was another reason why we had leased them as well.
Council, any other questions? Then, Mr. Vogt, you want to make a motion here?
Yes. I'll make a motion that we approve the replacement of fitness equipment at the rec center from Johnson Fitness and Wellness through a purchase of $133,695 to be paid or to be borrowed from the rec center maintenance fund and paid back over a period of 4 years.
I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Dana, does that give you what you need to work with Janelle?
Council, yes, I have not actually looked at if there are any restrictions on that maintenance fund, but if there aren't, we can certainly do that. If there are, I would bring something back to council.
All right,
I don't think there are, but go ahead and check.
Yeah.
Right. If there are, you'll bring it back and we'll
Correct.
look at this again. Okay, perfect. Next item up is the visitors presentation. Mr. and Mrs. Heaney, would you like to come up and join us again?
Hi, guys.
Just one more time for the record.
One
And we'll
more
use the
time.
restaurant address.
Kim Heaney, 7929 Victoria Drive.
And Kevin Heaney. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for earlier. We're looking forward to working with the community, I don't know if everybody knows, we ran the golf course out in Waconia for 26 years. So we're really looking forward to, we live in Victoria. We've lived here for 28 years. So we're looking forward to kind of doing our thing here. And that's
Yep.
about all I have.
Yeah, just being a part of the community, we're excited, and also restoring the building. I mean, it's over 100 years old, and to keep that integrity is incredible, and working with the Mavisons has been unreal. So, yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
So if I may, can you, a lot of the people have heard about it in various things as far as, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about, a little bit about your menu, when you expect to open? And I've been asked about parking and valet service, so there's a lot of rumors. I don't know if you're able to speak to that at all, but if you could, I think the public would like to hear that. So.
So Americana food, whiskey. I'm a whiskey girl. Sorry, guys, I love whiskey. Up to the microphone. So Americana food, we basically took like the top 1/3 of our menu from Island View and brought it here. So we're really excited. Things from burgers, beef biscuits, shrimp scampi, our famous mac and cheese, scallops, help me, walleye fingers, walleye sandwich, and our wood fire pizza oven, which is going to be totally new compared to what we did out at Island View. Just brought this back in from San Francisco area. Really fun to work with that oven, so that'll be a fun new challenge for us. What was the second question you asked me? Opening up soon. Yes, we're trying to shoot for May 1st. Is
Okay.
what our ultimate goal is, to be open and ready to roll. It's been 2.5 years of developing this restaurant, so very excited to get into it.
Perfect. And then let's get rid of the rumors, because everybody's asking.
Yes.
Is there going to be a valet service?
Yes.
Okay, could you please?
So we're working with a local property owner and scheduling valet from 4 o'clock on. We won't do it for lunch, but in the evenings, and parking in the parking lot. We'll have a valet service. That's what I can tell you. So, yeah, we were already way ahead of the parking regiment.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with the council and the public?
You want to talk about the name?
Oh, Winchester and Rye. We decided to honor our ancestors. Kevin's grandpa, great-great-grandpa, great-great-grandpa, New Haven, Connecticut, were all gunsmiths. They made all the wood handles for Winchester.
And metal.
And metal. Yep, they did all of that. My side of the family were the bootleggers. So we made all the rye whiskey and decided to put that together and honor Sophie, Matt, and Pops. So that's where the name came from.
Well, congratulations. Good luck on your opening.
It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you
Thanks.
again.
Great, and looking forward to it.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, for those that are just joining us, we're now going to tackle item that was originally on the agenda as 8B. I believe we have a lot of people. So here's, before we get started, council, I spoke just very briefly just before we started the council meeting with Dana. She suggests, I would agree. What I'd like to do tonight, the staff is not asking the council to make any decisions. What I'd like to do is have Kara give a brief update. Then I've got a whole bunch of slips. I want all of the residents to be able to weigh in. And then since the council's not asked to make a decision, I don't want to say, I don't think we need a long discussion here, right? But I do think that we need to hear all of the comments. That's not to say that you can't ask questions, but Dana suggests, and I would agree, that we should keep our comments to a minimum because it's going to come back. This is to get information out to the community as a whole, and we're going to be having in-depth discussions in the future. So before we begin, council, any thoughts on that? Would you agree?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Kara?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. That was a wonderful setup for what I was going to say, but on February 25th, the council was provided an overview on the Marsh Lake Road project as part of an update on other transportation priorities. So since that time, we did have an informal neighborhood meeting on March 12th. Some additional information was requested as a result of that meeting. So we wanted to be sure to share that additional information with the city council and members of the public prior to the council having to take any action on this item. You'll see here on the slide the additional information that was referenced in the packet. So the information is included on the packet. It's also been posted to the project website as well. But included, we have the traffic forecast memo, a revised typical section and layout that the county agreed to consider as a result of the meeting on the 12th, project costs and funding, and then alternative options. In terms of next steps, we'll be hosting an informal neighborhood meeting on Thursday the 28th here from 5:30 to 6:30. The new city manager will be attending that meeting as well. And then on April 8th at the regular city council meeting, staff will review the history of the project, the current status, and then council will have options to consider for moving forward. Either approving the typical section for Marsh Lake Road in accordance with county recommendations or directing staff to pursue an alternative project that would not include county funding. And with that, I'll look to see if Dana has anything to add.
Nothing to add.
Before we get to the resident comments, I'd just like to say, everybody in Victoria, that March 28th meeting, if you're concerned or interested, I think you need to attend and make your voice heard. With that, let's go to the resident comments. I've got a number of slips. First up, Jeremy Rock. Jeremy, you've done this before. Name and address for the record, please.
I wasn't prepared to go first.
That's the way they shuffled.
Jeremy Rock, 5925 Marsh Lake Road. So thanks for the opportunity. I'll be really brief. I just wanted to say that overall, our resident group, as well as myself and my wife personally, we're concerned about safety, we're concerned about the quality of the road, and we're concerned about the amount of interference for the property owners that are impacted by the right-of-way acquisition. There are a number of unknowns that we will hopefully get some answers for on the 28th, and there probably will be more unknowns that will come up at that meeting that we'll gain answers for before April 8th when you actually have to make a decision. It's not just about the median, it's not just about the width, it's also about road design, and because none of us are road engineers, we don't really know what we're dealing with, and so we've been doing our own research trying to find, where is it in the Minnesota DOT road design book where it talks about curve angles and banking and those types of things for simple things like when we cross the creek, can we minimize or can we increase the tightness of the curvature of those curves if we're also increasing the bank so that it still meets all their design standards? Would that resolve any issues? How the median would be created, we hadn't even thought about the different types of median as we've been talking about this median or no median part, because it's not just median or no median. It's been simplified to that point, and it seems like that's the decision we're making. But there are, as you can think as you drive down the roads, there's 1,000 different kinds of medians. And the pictures that we've been shown have always had this shadow of a tree and landscaping, and maybe that's not realistic, and how wide does it have to be to support that, and all that kind of stuff, versus if we make it really narrow, is it just going to be a chunk of concrete? Will it have grass on it? All of those things, because median in general is a safety thing, but it also is a huge imposition to the farmers at the east end of the road, and it also obviously is an imposition if you can't turn left out of your driveway because there's no break in the median. So we've gotten different levels of answer at different points in this discussion over the last couple of years, and so there's a lot of confusion. So now that we're getting some technical answers and some detail, I think it will help us. So I'm glad that you're not making any decisions tonight, because the 28th and beyond should be a more interesting time of discovery of what are the things that are going to affect this design. We also, want to understand speed limits versus design standard. Signage, can we get the radar type sign like they have on the road that goes over the rec center, where it has the speed limit flashing or the speed flashing at you as you go by, and whether or not there's allowances for a crosswalk or a crosswalk type space, especially for places where there already is some pedestrian traffic. Now, I'm not saying that there's 1,000 people, but when my kids cross over the road to go across to the barn, I really don't want them crossing 47 feet of concrete with people flying in both directions. So anyway, so we're concerned about safety. I'm glad you're not making any decisions. There's a lot of stuff to figure out here, and we're glad that we're getting to some details so that we all can have a better understanding of what it is we're saying yes or no to, or not really yes or no, but giving our opinion on. So I guess that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Sean, Patel? It's hard, I'm sorry.
Pithy.
Pithy, sorry, I couldn't read it.
Here we go.
Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Sean Pithy. I live at 9450 County Road 43. Briefly, I believe I speak for the majority of the residents of Marsh Lake Road in that we favor a two-lane undivided city street and have adamantly opposed any roadway divided. Signing minutes from 2014, the city engineer was in agreement with the stated that this should be a two-lane city street, adding also somewhere in there that they would lack funding for this for the next 4 to 5 years, and here we are in 2019. At some point, this project migrated to the county and its design, citing future roadway expansion, met council statistics, traffic counts, and anticipated residential growth models in its initial design. It was a 140-foot section, a 4-lane divided roadway. County-directed design and residents opposed, but have butted heads ever since. Several weeks ago, a group met in council chambers for another design review, and another unfavorable divided roadway design was presented, at which point I've come to the conclusion, after 4 years of meeting, that the county will dictate design regardless of the residents' wishes. That evening ended with the county stating the 120-foot divided roadway is our standard, and if unapproved, we, the county, will walk away from this project. Personally, good riddance. This council now is on the verge of a vote. My hope would be a no vote for the county design and move Marsh Lake Road back to an undivided city street. In closing, this project has festered between the residents and the county with Ms. Guerin and Focus Engineering in the middle. I find it ironic that no mention of minimum roadway standard has been brought up, to my knowledge, in the past 4 years of meetings, and I question whether Ms. Guerin has represented the interests of the residents of Marsh Lake and the owners of the land of Marsh Lake Road in their best interest. Thank you.
Just one comment. The council will not be voting tonight on that, just for clarity. Thank you, Sean. Josh Mulville? Name and address for the record.
My name is Josh Mulvihill. I live at 5270 Marsh Lake Road. And I wanted to just talk about 5 reasons for the council to reject a 55 mile per hour county road.
Do we have this in soft copy so the rest of the people can see this and people at home?
What are you talking about? What I just handed out?
Right. This diagram?
That's
that we're
all.
looking at?
I brought 5 copies.
All right. Can we get a copy of this and post it? So.
Mayor, we can make it part of the public packet and we'll post it.
All right. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah. So 5 reasons to reject a 55 mile per hour county road and build a city road. Number 1 is resident agreement. Residents, landowners, and the board of Marsh Lake Hunt Club on Marsh Lake Road are in agreement to build a 40 mile per hour city road that meets Minnesota state aid design standards. Unanimously, we do not want fast speeds on this road. Our desire is a 2-lane, undivided 40 mile per hour road without curb or gutters, without bike paths or boulevards. Number 2 is safety. The county's 55 mile per hour design speed is an inherently dangerous design for a residential road with driveways that turn onto and off the road, slow-moving farm equipment, a city playground, and a neighborhood pool in close proximity to the roadway. Fast speeds and pedestrians do not mix well, and many children live on and near this road. The county has stated that Marsh Lake Road will be designed similar to Orchard Road in Waconia. If you have not seen this road, I encourage you to check it out. This is a county road built to a 55 mile per hour design standard with a median. The road is also posted at 55 miles per hour, which I fully anticipate Marsh Lake Road would be as well. And the median does not slow that traffic down below 55. There is no residences along this road on Orchard Road. Once the county designs a road, the city has no jurisdiction over controlling speeds. Marsh Lake Road is a residential roadway and needs to be designed accordingly. Number 3, traffic numbers do not justify a 55 mile per hour, 106 to 120 foot county road. Current traffic volumes, which is under 400 cars per day, and future traffic projections do not justify a 55 mile per hour design standard. As a reminder, a 106 to 120 foot right-of-way is wider than Engler Boulevard as well as Victoria Drive. The county estimates that Marsh Lake Road would have a maximum of 2,800 to 3,700 cars per day by 2040. The proposed county road design is based fully on the assumption that a future connection is built between Marsh Lake Road and Airport Road. I've provided a map that you have that shows all the property that would need to be acquired by the county between Marsh Lake Road and Airport Road for that connection to occur. The cost would be astronomical, easily millions of dollars in land acquisition alone, not to mention the cost of building the road, which I think would be in the tens of millions of dollars. This connection is unnecessary as there are already 2 major highways going to Waconia. We have Engler and Highway 5. In addition, the county has already proven they cannot accurately determine traffic projections, and they continue to reduce their numbers. In today's staff report, you can see that in 2017, the county assumed the city of Victoria would have a population of 26,490 people, and they built today's proposed road design on that assumption. You will also see that the county has revised those numbers and now assumes the city of Victoria will have a population of 15,400 people. That's in 2040. But the road design has not been updated to reflect the reduction of 10,000 fewer people in the city, and that also does not take into consideration the reduced projected population of Waconia. On February 28, 2017, Lyndon Robgent stated at a city council meeting that a 2-lane undivided roadway is designed to handle 13,000 cars per day. And in today's report, Ms. Guerin states that a 2-lane undivided road can accommodate 16,200 cars per day, which exceeds any projection that we will have. I'm almost done, Mr. Mayor. A 40-mile-per-hour city road will adequately serve residents and provide a road that will allow the city to accommodate significant growth for decades to come. The council needs to make a data-driven decision based on actual traffic volumes and not build a massive road on a highly unlikely what-if possibility. 2 left, much shorter. Number 4 is please preserve the beauty of Marsh Lake Road. A 55-mile-per-hour design standard would require an unnecessarily wide footprint, which would result in the removal of hundreds of mature trees and destroy the beauty of the road. On the proposed design that Ms. Guerin provided the council for tonight's meeting, it does not include construction zone limits. These limits were shown to residents in the May 12th meeting, and they reveal the impact on both sides of the roads, which is much wider than the right-of-way reveals. This is an example of the council not being provided full disclosure of information. A city road with a similar alignment would preserve most of the trees and maintain traffic calming features that already exist in this road. Clear-cutting hundreds of trees is inconsistent for a city that wants to be known as a community of lakes and parks and has a resolution on tonight's agenda to preserve trees in this city. And then last, number 5, the origin of the county's involvement. I'm not sure if this council is aware of that. On December 22nd, 2014, City Council meeting minutes state, and I quote, Ms. Gearin has requested to have the county take responsibility for the reconstruction of Marsh Lake Road since the city is not eligible to receive state aid until 2019. Ms. Gearin explained for the road to be deemed a county road, homes would be forced into relocating to grant additional space for the roadway. It is Ms. Gearin's opinion that the road should become a city road, end quote. It is important to note Ms. Gearin initiated this project with Carver County without the direction of city staff or the council, and has continued to push her own agenda to make Marsh Lake Road a county road since that time. Ms. Gearin's reason for a county road design was that the city of Victoria did not have funds to complete until 2019. Well, here we are. It is now 2019. The city of Victoria has the funds, and there is no reason to build a county road. Ms. Gearin believes a county road is incompatible with homes, and every resident here agrees. The Marsh Lake Road should be a city road. At the 2008 August council meeting, Ms. Gearin was given instructions by this council to pursue a 2-lane undivided road design and bring that back for consideration. In March 2019, under a new city council, Ms. Gearin pushed forward her own agenda once again by presenting a 2-lane divided highway, a similar road design that she has continued to push for 4 years. For these 5 reasons, I ask that you request a 55-mile-per-hour highway and build Marsh Lake Road as a city road. Thank you for listening.
Could you send us a copy of that?
I've got copies right here.
Thank you. And by the way, I was not going to cut you off.
I wouldn't either.
Hang on a second. Next, Julie Schmig. I got one right. Julie, please name and address for the record.
Yep, Julie Schmeek Hilltop Farm. Can you hear me okay, or bring it down? Okay, there we go.
There we go.
5475 Marsh Lake Road. So, good evening, Council, and I'm going to take you on a little road trip tonight. And just like any road trip, the question always arises, are we there yet? Well, the answer to that question depends on which road you take and how fast you want to drive. When it comes to Marsh Lake Road, how fast do we want people to drive? It's only 1.5 miles long, so really there is no need to go so fast. And like any road trip, take your time and enjoy your surroundings of farms, fields, forest, and lakes. That's what makes Victoria, and especially this section of rolling hills, so unique. This is why people want to call this slice of Victoria home. Does Marsh Lake Road need to be improved? Yes, we are there. The question is, how should it be improved? The county is proposing a design for Marsh Lake Road that has a right-of-way ranging from 106 to 120 feet with dedicated median space and a 55-mile-per-hour design standard to handle 16,100 cars per day at full build-out, which is not forecasted for many decades down the road. Are we there yet? No, we're not there. Where we are now and into the foreseeable future is a cross-section of Victoria that captures its farming heritage on one end and emerging neighborhoods on the other end. In between, there are the farms, Marsh Lake Hunt Club, rural neighbors, and urban newcomers who value country living. So country, in fact, that there are still 3 different farm families who continue to run land along Marsh Lake Road. The majority of the remaining road frontage are these rural elements and are not slated to be developed in the foreseeable future. So how do we blend the reality of the rural lifestyle on Marsh Lake Road with the urban trends emerging? For the foreseeable future, paving Marsh Lake Road in its current path as a 2-lane undivided city road with a 40-mile-per-hour design can serve all of these elements well and reduce the cost to the city and to its taxpayers. There is an option presented in the staff report that speaks to this alternative, paving it in a way similar to the Airport Road project that would be good for 20 years. This is where we are. We think 20 years is a good window, and in 20 years we are going to know a heck of a lot more about what this corridor to Waconia is actually going to look like. A lot can change in 20 years. In fact, look at how much has changed in just this past year. Up until March 20th of 2018, based on older data, we were being told by the county that their traffic forecasting was warranting a 4-lane divided road for Marsh Lake Road. Plug in new data with new numbers, and we learned that things had changed dramatically. As Kara shares in her staff report, with ongoing revisions to a comprehensive plans, forecasting work drove the county's conclusion in 2018 that a 4-lane roadway was no longer needed for this corridor in the short term, 2040, or the long term, full build out. Wow, that's a huge change. In 1 year, we dropped from a 4-lane road down to a 2-lane road. And in the coming 20 years, a lot of things can also change that are challenging to predict right now. Let's give ourselves the time to do this right with practical intention. So, are we there yet? Yes, this is where we are. Paving Marsh Lake Road as a 2-lane undivided city roadway preserves both the uniqueness of this land while also preserving options for the future. Our family has a lot at stake here. Our farm was homesteaded in 1853, and we know this land. Our farm covers a good percentage of the road frontage on the eastern end, and our land lies on both sides of Marsh Lake Road. To look at things from a farming perspective, if instead the road were to be built according to the county's 2-lane divided design, what would that look like for us? The current gravel road is 30 feet wide. The county's plan calls for 120 feet right-of-way with inclusion of an 18-foot wide median. For the purposes of accommodating farm equipment along our section of the road, the county has stated that they could build it with an at-grade or flat median that would allow large equipment to drive over it. That means the road, curb to curb, would be a total width of 74 feet of pavement and concrete. We have a huge concern that with a road that wide open and a 55-mile-per-hour design standard, cars will try to pass the tractors and machinery we are running up and down the road. In fact, we can guarantee that they will try to pass us. And where will they be trying to pass us? As they are approaching hills or curves with poor sight lines. In all of the years our family has been farming, with the road as it has been, people have been very respectful of our tractors on the road. Our trips are always less than a half-mile long, and because cars can see the barn and cows nearby on top of the hill, they slow down and wait a bit until we turn off the road. We even have new folks stop by our farm to share how they appreciate seeing the farming going on and value its role and presence in the community. Again, Marsh Lake Road is only 1.5 miles long. How fast do you need to go? If it is paved now as a 2-lane undivided with a solid double center stripe with a 40-mile-per-hour speed posting, this will make it all the safer for us. Going back to the county's proposal of a 74-foot wide road, looking at it from another angle, this 74 feet of flat pavement and concrete in front of our farm would look like an airport runway. Your home is your sanctuary. Would anyone want to look out their window and see a gigantic landing strip approaching their home? Would anyone, as they drive home, want to drive down an airport runway? Is this what we want Victoria to look like? The community of Victoria is a unique place. That's why so many people want to make Victoria their home. And Marsh Lake Road holds a special allure. The vicinity of Marsh Lake Road is surrounded by the lakes of Wasserman, Pearson, and Marsh Lake. There is a mystique that surrounds lake country as nature provides an air of renewal and homecoming. For many, this is the magnetic draw that Victoria holds for them. And the majority of drivers along Marsh Lake Road, they are just people wanting to go home. And in doing so, along Marsh Lake Road, one leaves the hustle and bustle of the busy suburbs behind as they head homeward and breathe in the rolling hills, forests, and lakes, all which create a very special sense of place. Along Marsh Lake Road, Victoria has an opportunity to preserve a peaceful, natural landscape. If you build a big, fast road, that will be gone, and home will no longer feel like home. Victoria is the city of lakes and parks, and paving Marsh Lake Road in its current form offers us a chance to preserve this natural landscape, brimming with rural appeal, that can be cultivated and nurtured in the midst of emerging neighborhoods while preserving room for the future. By paving Marsh Lake Road as a 2-lane undivided city street now, we can retain this sense of country. Are we there yet? Yes, this is where we want to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Kelly Hollis.
I'll go. I'll go.
All right.
Jen Mulvihill.
Got it.
Okay.
You were the next one up anyways.
Oh, okay. I have a packet for each of the council members.
We'll trade.
And if you get your copies here.
Name and address, too, when you get up.
Hey there. Jen Mulvihill, 5720 Marsh Lake Road, here in Victoria. So, in Ms. Guerin's staff report tonight, Kara explained that the City of Victoria is exploring other options for Marsh Lake Road other than the Carver County 55-mile-per-hour highway design. And I'd like to take a moment to speak to some other examples of what could be done on Marsh Lake Road. Going backwards a little bit, Marsh Lake Road was designated as a Minnesota State Aid Road on April 10th of 2017. I was actually here and spoke at this podium that night and asked questions about what does it mean to become a Minnesota State Aid Road. So quoting from the Minnesota Department of Transportation website, it says, state aid funds can be used to support the state's system of roads and bridges. Minnesota Department of Transportation distributes funds based on a formula determined by the legislature. Quote. So, as a result, the city of Victoria is able to use their designated state aid funds for this project. In fact, the city's most recent CIP plan, which was approved in December of 2018, the council approved using $2.26 million of their state aid funds and bonding $1.2 additional for the Marsh Lake Road project. So the city has anticipated spending $3.46 million for the city's portion of the Marsh Lake Road project. That's a lot of money. So I want to give you two examples of projects that are similar to Marsh Lake Road and that were recently completed here in our area using state aid funds to complete the project. So the first is Airport Road. Airport Road is just to our west. It's a 2.7 mile stretch of roadway. It used to be a gravel roadway in Laketown Township. So at the onset of that project, Airport Road was seeing between 400 and 600 cars per day, which is less than Marsh Lake Road is currently seeing. So Laketown Township voted that Airport Road needed to be paved, and they set to work paving it from the end of the Waconia city limits to Laketown Road. So they did regrading, they fixed the problem subgrade, and they improved the design speed to 40 miles per hour. So the project from design to completion took less than 1 year, with final cost totaling $2.1 million after design and administrative fees. The roadway has posted speed limits of 30 miles per hour in front of homes, and this project met Minnesota State Aid standards and is an excellent example of what we could do on Marsh Lake Road. In your packet, you will see I've included for you page 1 of the design, the official design for the Airport Road project. And if you look at the lower right-hand corner, it shows you that it's signed off, that this project, it was signed off on by the district state aid engineer, that it is in compliance with state aid rules and policies, and it was approved for state aid funding per their engineer. And I also included for you the project map on the Minnesota State Aid website and the official description of that project. So the second project is Halstead Drive in Minnetrista, close to us as well. Halstead Drive was a 1.7 mile stretch of gravel roadway, and its primary use was residential and agricultural, just as Marsh Lake Road was. So with increased traffic, deteriorating conditions, and the need to cross the Dakota Trail, this road also had hills and valleys and just unique terrain like Marsh Lake Road. Currently, the speed limit is posted at 35, and it had a 40 mile per hour design speed. They also used Minnesota State Aid dollars to complete the project, and the total cost was $2.6 million. They just finished this project this summer. So I provided a chart just comparing the two projects to Marsh Lake Road. Same, I won't go through it, point by point, but same uses, all started out as gravel roads, but I really want to point you to the cost per mile to build. So Airport Road came in at $777,800 per mile to build. Halstead Drive was $1.5 million per mile to build. But under the current plan with Carver County, Marsh Lake Road would be totaling $6 million per mile to build. And I guarantee that is a low estimate. $6 million per mile to build Marsh Lake Road with the county.
Can I ask you where the $6 million comes from? Because our total that we're given by Kira to build Marsh Lake Road, if we go through the county, is $3.46 million.
Yep, so the total cost of the project was $9 million per Kara's reference. Divide that number by 1.5, gives you the cost up per mile.
Taking the county's cost into...
Sure are, and I live in this county. We all live in this county. These are our tax dollars.
Okay.
$6 million per mile. My money, your money, all of our money. Okay, so if we decided to go with any roadway similar to these, we could use our state aid dollars. So even if we went with the $1.5 million per mile cost to build, at 1.5 miles, the cost to build Marsh Lake Road would only be $2.25 million, which incidentally is just shy of the $2.26 million that we have set aside for Marsh Lake Road with the state aid funds, and we wouldn't have to do bonding or any of those other things. It would save a lot of money. So I just want to note two things that are misleading regarding these other design options that Ms. Guerin put in the staff report tonight. First, the staff report says, in quotes, for Marsh Lake Road, this airport road approach would be a short-term investment in the corridor. The road would require full reconstruction to county standards in 10 to 15 years. This is absolutely misleading. Kevin Gutneck from the Minnesota Department of Transportation has said on record, we design asphalt to last 20 years. And Kara herself has said on record in city council meetings over and over and over again that bituminous pavement roads will last at least 20 to 30 years. So to say that Marsh Lake Road would need a full reconstruction in 10 to 15 years, as she stated, is absolutely misleading. It's absolutely misleading. Building Marsh Lake Road as a two-lane city road would meet all of the needs of the city for the foreseeable future. Second, so Ms. Guerin stated in her staff report that the cost of building a roadway to Minnesota state aid standards would cost between $4 to $8 million. Again, no. This number is highly inflated, and the two projects that I just showed you and all the supporting documents show that. So either Kara didn't do her homework when she was presenting the costs of building a road using state aid standards, or again, she's pushing her agenda to go with the county project and build a huge road as she has for the last 4 years. So the residents of Marsh Lake Road are unanimous. We do not support the Carver County project to build a 55-mile-per-hour highway on Marsh Lake Road. We would like to see a two-lane, undivided, 40-mile-per-hour design speed, 30-mile-per-hour posted speed limit, city roadway that is built to Minnesota state aid standards. The City of Victoria has the funds available to them to do this, and going this route will be safe, it will be cost-effective, and it will serve the needs of the city for many decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly, do you want to go next?
Good evening. I'm Kelly Hallis, 5760 Marsh Lake Road. Not only am I a landowner on Marsh Lake Road, I am a Victoria resident. Not all of the landowners on Marsh Lake Road are Victoria residents. I am a tax-paying resident of the city of Victoria. A lot's been said, so I'm not going to do, not for redundancy and time purposes, I'm going to focus on some additional information. I had the opportunity to speak to several of our new neighbors in the Lake Town and the Wasserman Lake neighborhoods, which are north of Marsh Lake Road, the past week. And they have expressed to me their concerns that Marsh Lake Road was going to be anything else than a paved, two-lane, undivided urban road as it is today. Their comments were that they drive Marsh Lake Road every day and they remember why they moved out here. They could have moved to Burnsville, they could have moved to Lakeville or Edina, but they didn't. They chose to move to Victoria because it is beautiful out here. We still have a sense of being in the country even though we're so close to the city. And I think, as Julie mentioned, that is calming to a lot of people, and that's what makes our city unique. Marsh Lake Road does not need to be an overbuilt, over-designed two-lane road with a median built to certain standards. It needs to be a road that people can drive on to get to their homes and enjoy the beauty of what we have. In doing some research on this whole topic tonight, and actually in doing research since 2014, when I was at that city council meeting and heard Kara talk about homes on Marsh Lake Road being relocated to make room for the county road, one of them being mine,
as I left here with the worst stomach ache I could ever imagine, thinking my home was going to be gone, I ran across the City of Victoria Marsh Lake Area Study. And I don't know, Councilman Vogt, if you've seen this or if any of the council members have seen this, but this was a study that our area was picked. It was a grant given to us from the McKnight Foundation as part of the Community Growth Options program administered through 1,000 Friends of Minnesota, which is the Envision Minnesota program. Do you know one reason we were chosen to receive this grant? Quote, "This area was selected for this study because it contains some of the city's premier natural features, and the city wants to ensure there is sensitivity to those features as development progresses." I think we all need to remember that when people come and visit us on Marsh Lake Road, they probably look around and say, wow, Victoria is beautiful. This road is amazing. I wish where I lived would have been forethinking enough to preserve the environment and the topography instead of building over-designed roads. I wish I lived on a street like this. Please consider the city taking this initiative as a new administration. Let's measure progress, not on how big this road is, but on how collaboratively we can all work together as residents and landowners on Marsh Lake Road and the new neighborhoods. Let's keep this road beautiful. Let's build a 2-lane road, no curbs, no gutters, no trails, and let's have a safe speed limit so it can accommodate the needs of all of us.
Thank you. Can you get a copy
Thank
of that
you.
document to Dana? And Dana, can you get that out, right? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Two left. Next, Jacob. You've got 8B and 8C. Do you mind holding on to 8C?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I will keep my comments very short. My name is Jacob Steen with Larkin Hoffman Attorneys, and we represent the Marsh Lake Hunt Club. I just want to point out or just reiterate, I know it's in the record previously, but we have a strong preference for 2-lane, undivided, rural section. And that would be no curb and gutter, no lane, no access controls, no medians. And we just believe that this is the most appropriate design at this time. It's going to limit the amount of alignment changes, limit the amount of right-of-way acquisition, and ultimately, it's not going to preclude the city from acquiring additional right-of-way as adjacent properties develop over time, over the next 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Strensland.
Council members, mayor, city manager. My name is Scott Stensland. I live at 5760, what's it, Julie's height? Marsh Lake Road. Currently on the Planning Commission. I served on the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. I'm on the Parking Task Force. I also serve on Carver County Water Management Organization. I'm the representative for Victoria. I say that for no other reason that, just like all of you, I'm really committed to Victoria. And I'm getting choked up right now just thinking about it.
Great place.
How lucky am I? They're my neighbors. I had a whole long thing I was going to walk through the beginning of this. I've been up here, I think, 3 times. And I'm not going to do that because I can't do as good a job as they did. But I think there's one part I need to mention, especially for Judy and Dana. And I talked about it last August. Julie mentioned that they farm. That farm is a beacon of Marsh Lake Road. But there's 3 other families that farm on Marsh Lake Road. 2 enter from the west side. We got 2 coming from the east side. And most of the farming is done at the Hunt Club. We forget about that. There's over 2 different families farm over a total of 40 acres of hay. They're cutting hay all summer long. There's 40 acres of corn that's taken care of from another farmer, not from the Hunt Club, farmers that are in our area. But you have to think about this. We talked about this in August. You know how wide a tractor is? It's 16 feet, you know, from tire to tire. 16 feet. How about a combine? 25 feet. I'm not 25 feet from that wall. 25 feet. How does that work? How does that work with medians? Cutting hay. Guys, that's like mowing your lawn. That's not once. You're constantly cutting. Tractor, hay baler, wagon. 60 feet. I can't even show you that. That does not work with medians. Here's the frustrating part. We've been here 3 times. Every time we're here, it's 1 step forward, it's 2 steps back. That meeting in August, you gave explicit directions to Kara to bring you a new design, 2 lanes, no median, 1 with an option to add a median. I haven't seen that. That was August, September, October, November, December, January. We're 8 months out. This has been dragged out. She has not brought you what you wanted to see. What are we... Guys, let's take this back. Let's make it a city road. We can do this. We can pay for it. It's the right thing. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dana, unless the council objects or has comments, I think the March 28th meeting with the neighborhood needs to be publicized for others in the city. Should be in this room, and I believe that we should record that meeting and make it available on the website. Council, any objections to that?
No, I actually plan on being there.
All right, so I think we should post notice too, because I think we may end up with a quorum of council members coming in to listen to this meeting. I'm talking about specifically the March 28th meeting.
Do we have enough time to do that?
3
today's the
days
what,
is what
25th?
illegal, but this wouldn't be a legal requirement, so I would defer to our city attorney to advise on
Yeah,
the timing.
Mayor and council, if you think you may have a quorum of the council there, you would want to post it as a special meeting, and you need to do that 3 days in advance, so I think you have time.
We do it today?
So let's make this, do it official, get it out there. The council will not take action that night, but there may be a quorum of the council present to listen. So as a reminder, the council members, if we go there, we cannot discuss what we hear, but we obviously can come and listen. Please, and I think this meeting is not going to go 5:30 to 6:30. I think it's more like 5:30 to 8. So let's be prepared.
Council members, Mr. Mayor, just in reference to the recording of the meeting, we will certainly do what we can to have, we don't have staff, it's a contracted service, so we would have to coordinate with people who are available. We do, however, have the ability to do an audio recording. We could tape record.
Yeah, so let me be clear. That's actually what I meant. I wasn't talking necessarily video.
So we can certainly do that, not a problem.
Okay. Objection, council? We're okay with that?
Okay.
No. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I know this is there's a lot of people that have a lot here. I appreciate you guys taking the time in expressing your views. Please, for everybody, pass the word about the discussions going on with Marsh Lake Road, because I'm sure we'll be talking about this soon, and I hope to see the council push this forward quickly. Basically means as soon as possible, get the council to pick a design and get this thing going forward. So, again, thank you. With that, let's move on. The next item is, so that was 8B on the original agenda. So we're back to 6A now. This item, Dana, would you please explain? This item has to be tabled?
Am
I right? Yeah, it is.
Sure. Mayor and members of the City Council, recent legislative changes require cities to post any ordinances 10 days in advance before it's being considered. We did publish the public hearing for the rezoning of the Bethesda property. However, we didn't put it on our website, so it's a technicality that we can't hear it for tonight's meeting, and we're recommending that the City Council continue the item.
Council, without objection, I move that we continue this item to the next meeting, April 8th. I did speak with them. Because of the designs, they would like us to do this as soon as possible. So I move that we continue the public hearing on the variance. Hang on a second.
Council members, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that you open the public hearing and continue it as part of your motion to the 8th.
Yeah, Mayor and council, you don't want to have to republish notice of the hearing. You've given notice tonight, so you open the hearing tonight.
And then continue it?
Continue it and take input.
Got it. So at this point, I'm going to open the public hearing. Now that the public hearing is open, I move that we continue the public hearing on the variance preliminary and final plat and rezoning to the 8 April City Council meeting. Is there a second?
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That is being continued now to 6A is continued to 8 April. At that point, remind me that we'll have that public hearing, Dana, and then we'll have to close that.
Correct.
Okay.
I did have a little question.
Yep, go ahead.
Wasn't there something planned for them on the 8th of April that we would have to push out from that?
No, I think this is there?
So I think, Councilmember Black, what you're referring to is the TIF application. That is the public hearing for that related to this project is scheduled currently at 6:30 p.m. on April 22nd. The rezoning piece is separate and separate from that TIF application, and so it doesn't necessarily have to be on the same day or in any particular order.
Okay, so there's not a time frame as to, from that point to...
It's a separate issue, separate from the TIF application.
All right.
Just checking.
Nope, that's right. I think Mr. Campbell left. So we continue. Oh, sorry. So we continued this. Not going to bring you up to speak since we continued it. Okay. Let's move on. 7A, Dana.
Council, the next item is the appointment of the committees or commissions. And earlier this evening at your workshop, you interviewed applicants for both the Water Quality Committee as well as the Planning Commission. So there are 2 openings that need appointment for the Water Quality Committee. And then there are 5 openings and 7 applicants for the Planning Commission. We are attempting to stagger terms as we did previously to make sure that you don't have a large number of commissioners rolling off at the same time. And with that, we would ask that when you're making your appointments that you would consider 3 applicants for a 3-year term and 1 for a regular term, a 1-year term. And then there is 1 alternate. Historically, you've not placed term limits on that alternate, as it's been council's practice when there are vacancies to move those alternates into those positions.
All right, one other item. We had 2 openings on the Water Quality Committee, but we had a 3rd in the workshop. The council agreed to add 3 because it's representing a lake that was not currently represented on the committee, correct?
That is correct, and council, to do that, if you, if it is the will of the council to do that, I would recommend that you, that your motion include a direction to staff to modify the resolution to expand the committee.
Okay. I move that we direct staff to expand the Water Quality Committee by 1 additional person and make that change in the resolution. And then approve Noel Barron, Brian Billings, and Craig Eggers for the 3 open positions on the Water Quality Committee. Is there a second to that?
A second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, so all 3 are appointed. Just a point of clarification, they all had 3-year terms or 2-year terms, so we don't need to modify that motion to specify the length?
That is correct.
Okay. So let's move on then to the Planning Commission. In this case, we have 7 applicants for 5 positions. Reiterating what Dana just said, 3 for 3-year terms, 1 for a 2-year term, and 1 for an alternate. The only question I have, I don't know what the practice has been in the past as far as picking the chair of the Planning Commission. Is that something Planning Commission has done, or is that something the council has traditionally done?
Planning Commission has done it.
They pick amongst themselves?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, council, how do you want to go about this?
I think we should appoint the 3 3-year terms first.
Okay. Any objections? All right. So, Mr. Vogt, can you give me your top 3?
Okay. First of all, top pick would be John Wickman because he's an incumbent. He has incredible knowledge of the Planning Commission process and the city of Victoria, so we don't want to lose that.
Okay.
My second choice would be Jarrett Kuhn.
Okay.
And my third choice, John, you wore me down, John Iverson.
John Iverson. Judy?
I also picked John Wickman, Jarrett Kuhn, and I thought Shane Blazer because he's new and he'd have a fresh set of eyes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gregory?
Number one, John Iverson, John Brown Lee, and Chris Boyk.
And where? Chris Boyd. Okay. I also wanted John Iverson. I wanted John Brownlee, and I also wanted Shane. So that means we've got one selected, John Iverson, as one of the first three. The people that had two, we've got John Wickman, Jared Kuhn, John Brownlee, and Shane Blazer. So how do you guys want to go through and do this again? We've got to pick two more. Council, any suggestions?
I'm sticking with John Wickman and Jared Kuhn.
Judy?
So, yes, John Wickman and Jarrett Kuhn.
All right, Mr. Gregory?
John Iverson, John Brownlee.
We already picked Iverson, so.
Okay.
So who?
We need two more.
Okay, John Brownlee and Jared Kuhn.
John Brown, I'm sorry?
John Brownlee and Jarrett Kuhn.
Okay, so that's three. That's Jared Kuhn. I was John Brownlee and Shane again. So, all right, we've got Jared Kuhn and John Iverson. For the last 3-year term, I really want to see John Brownlee get on here. He's an independent voice. He's asking the right questions, and we need some new, in my opinion, we need some fresh faces on the Planning Commission. So for the last position, I really think that we need to consider somebody else. The other advantage of John Brownlee over John Wickman is he doesn't own any property. He doesn't have conflicts for any subject that comes up in downtown, which, as was discussed in the workshop, John Wickman actually had to recuse himself in the latest Planning Commission because there was a possibility he may be doing some business with the city. So let's look at this one more time again. Can we get 3 of us to agree on the next candidate?
John Brownlee had an extensive resume. I really think he deserves to be on there.
I'm sticking with John Wickman.
So let's do this. Let's put John Brownlee on there, and then for the 1 2-year term, put the other on.
That was a 1 year, I think, for 1 year term.
There's 3 3-year terms and 1. I've got here, it says 1 2-year term.
We have for 3 years.
Hang on a second, let me come back. Dana?
I must have missed something.
Yeah, me too.
It says here,
I only have, on this third round, I only heard council member vote. and-
right, yeah, hang on, I'm backing up.
The other two.
Oh,
Guys, hang on a second. There's 3 3-year terms, and there's 1 2-year term, is that correct?
one year term.
That's what I thought.
Okay, it says here 1 2-year term, so is this wrong?
On the motion.
I must have made a mistake on this sheet. It's right up there.
All right,
It's
so
a one.
it is a 1-year term, so this sheet is wrong. Okay, so what I'm saying here is we have an impasse with 2 and 2. What I'm suggesting to the council
Let's
is,
reach across the aisle. I did it with Jared Kuhn.
right, put John Brownlee on for 3, and we'll put John Wickman on for the 1-year term. That way they both get on.
Okay.
I second that motion.
Fine.
Does that work?
Yeah.
All right, so John Brownlee is on for the 3-year term, and this gets to your point, Dana. John Wickman is on for the 1-year term. We got that?
Yes.
That's fine, how we did that?
Now we need an alternate.
All right, so now the alternate, we originally, quite frankly, I think all 3 of them, I'd like to get somebody that's new that hasn't had a chance. I think all of them were fine, but originally when the council discussed it, the only person to get 2 votes was Shane Blazer. And we're appointing an alternate that stays until such time as they get on the Planning Commission. So unless the council has objections, do you want to vote again, or do you want to go with Shane?
Shane Blazer is fine with me.
Yeah, me too.
Shane? All right, so Shane Blazer is selected as the alternate. So I move that we appoint John Brownlee, Jarrett Kuhn, and John Iverson to the 3-year terms, John Wickman to a 1-year term, and Shane Blazer as the alternate to the Planning Commission. Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. We good, Dana?
Did it? Yes.
Cindy? Okay. Next item. Vacant lots update. Pat, this is yours.
Yes. So the city owns 4 vacant lots that we do not believe that we're going to ever use. These lots are at 6735 Smithtown Road, 6370 Maple Drive, 8420 Victoria Drive, and the northwest corner of 81st Street in Trillium. Go over these lots in general. The lot at Smithtown Road, it's about approximately 33,000 square feet in size. It is zoned R1 PUD. It's a remnant of a utility project. We would probably have to subdivide it and make it a little bit larger than that one little corner lot. The one at 6730 Maple Drive.
Just real quick, I'm sorry, can you go back? Does the city own that bigger lot? When you say expanded, it's expanded?
Right, we own the entire lot.
Okay, all right, that's all, I just want to make sure.
Is
Thank
that
you.
Highway 7 out there?
Highway 7's to the south.
Okay, so it's Smithtown Road.
Smithtown Road is to the north.
That's a beautiful piece of property, by the way. I just drove by it.
This one is a platted lot. The city received 2 lots for land trust lots. We sold the other lot, and this one could be easily sold.
Is that in Lake Bridge?
Yes.
Yes.
Gray Lakes, yes. And it's 10,890 square feet, zone PUD. Third lot is located on Victoria Drive. It used to be the old tower, water tower site. That's one of the things we would need to investigate is removing the foundation of that. It's zoned R1 and it's 20,500 square feet in size. The last lot is again a remnant parcel from a street project on 81st Street and Trillium Trail. It is 15,246 square feet and zoned R1. Just to get an idea of if these were marketable or if they're, how much would the city ever sell them for? I asked John Wickman to go out there and take a look at these. He believes that the properties at Smithtown Road and Maple Drive would sell for around $225,000 each. And the properties at 8420 County Road 11 and 81st Street would sell between $125,000 to $175,000. Back in 2016, staff did talk about selling this remnant piece on Smithtown Road. The Planning Commission at the time and the Park and Rec Commission at the time both recommended that they favored selling it, and then they had a public meeting with the neighbors, and the neighbors were a little more concerned about losing the open space, the parkland. And then at that time, the Park and Rec Commission decided not to sell that remnant piece. The Park and Rec Commission just a couple weeks ago had a brief discussion, and they would be interested in selling it. But a big part of this process, if the City Council wants us to continue through it, is having those meetings with the adjacent neighbors. So if the City Council directs staff to move forward with studying the sale of the 4 lots, staff would recommend the following process. First is to solicit quotes from professionals who would work with staff to study the costs and benefits of the 4 lots. Second would be the staff brings back a list of qualified professionals for council review and for you to approve one of the contracts. Third is that staff would bring back the costs and benefits of the study for council review. If the council looks at those benefits and costs of the 4 properties, then you would recommend us to talk to the neighbors, essentially. Staff would bring back the neighborhood feedback to the council. The council would direct staff and the realtor to list any of the homes. 3 of the homes were going to be a lot, I would imagine, easier to sell than the one on the Smithtown. After holding an open house on the Smithtown Road, staff would then ask the Park and Rec Commission for their recommendation on selling a lot, their formal recommendation. I think they just had a brief discussion, so I think it would be appropriate for them to get a formal recommendation to the City Council on selling the lot. And then finally, staff would report back to the city council on the public feedback in the open house meeting and the Park and Recreation Commission's recommendations for selling the Smithtown Road. City council would direct staff and the realtor to list the Smithtown property or to keep it at the lot as open space. One of the things I should also mention is right now, currently, the city does receive complaints from people in the Smithtown neighborhood that people are storing items on that lot, and that the staff has to take the time to go remove them or try to find out who is storing the properties. The other thing I'd like to mention is that currently staff spends about 40 hours a year maintaining all 4 of these lots.
Where did the original idea come up with hey, we should sell these properties the city owns?
I think part of it was just the public works staff saying that we're continually getting complaints about people storing items on this Smithtown lot property. And then staff brainstormed, do we have any other lots that would be vacant? Because we want to put all 4 of these, any other vacant lots that we have in front of the city council so you can discuss them all at once.
All right, thank you, council.
Square footage on the Maple Drive, it's 10,000. Is that relatively small compared to the neighborhood?
I think it's pretty consistent with the neighborhood. It was platted as a lot, so I imagine it meets the minimum lot size for that PUD.
Any thoughts on that, Tom? That's your neighborhood? I'm just wondering.
If I'm not mistaken, doesn't that back up to 5?
Correct.
I don't want to speak for the neighborhood. I think the key here on any of these lots is we need to make sure that we give those neighborhoods public notice and give them plenty of time to provide input back. I think we almost have to have that before we even decide to sell the lots, just to see if there's any objections, if you will. But generally, I think as long as we have an open process, neighbors can provide input in that we compete, if you will, to hire somebody to sell these. I'm not one. I don't think we should just be sitting on land that costs us money that's not doing the city any good if there's not some specific purpose to keep that land. And it sounds like these lots have been sitting there and there's no plans. We really can't do anything with them. It's not like these are being withheld for a pump station or anything like that, correct? It was just deeded to us as part of the development?
That's correct.
So the one in,
I'm sorry.
So the one in Lake Bridge, that was slated for a house.
That is correct.
All along.
Yes.
So why do we have to? I'm open to transparency with the neighborhood, but basically the population in the area should have been expecting a house to pop up there. So we shouldn't have any hesitation.
I agree with you. I lived there and I knew that lot existed, and we were, I never knew what the plans were for it. I moved in long before I was on the council. I don't think they're going to have any issues. I just want to make sure that people are aware. And to your point, it was always designed for a house. So
yeah. The other question I got is the huge lot on Smithtown. Was the idea that we would convert that as part of the park that's there? The tennis courts, et cetera, basketball thing are there. Was it the idea that we convert that to a larger park? Is that why the Park and Rec people are involved, or what?
So right now, it's guided for a park, open space.
Okay, so it's going to be part of the existing park.
Right. There's a very steep slope that separates the active park and the lower area, and that it really isn't one park.
Okay, that was the land that was talked about being a sledding hill. Is there a hill there?
It's covered in trees.
Yes, it's covered in
with trees. But,
right.
Okay.
Yep. And the lot on the corner was actually where an old city well was located, but it's been capped. So that was its own individual lot as a standalone. And then I think when we started looking internally at options for these rogue pieces of property, I'll call them, that area of space was not really usable when we reconstructed that park because of the woods and the steep slope.
Okay. So what is the Does the council get to discuss what the proceeds of these sales will be used for? Park and Rec is already claiming some of this, but which
Yes, they did. They were supportive if the money went to the Park and Rec
The
Fund,
other
yes.
three lots, we have so many needs. So, is there any suggestions?
Well, I think staff was looking at what the lots are used for now. And 3 of the lots, this one is kind of open space because it's near the golf course, and this one is kind of open space too. That we're thinking if you're taking away open space from the community, that it should go back to the parks and trails. This is the one that seems like it's a lot. It's going to be a residential lot, so this one would be more of, staff would recommend something that would go back into the general fund.
Yeah, I think the council's going to get into a discussion about where the funds would go. I mean, the Park and Rec can clearly make a recommendation, but there's so many needs across the city, so you're just trying to put first claim. That's assuming, of course, we decide to sell these, and they sell too, so.
I did have a question too on that, on the first one, the park. There's a lot of trees there and a steep slope, so if we do your steep slope tree ordinance, nobody's gonna be able to use that, are they?
We don't know for sure. I mean, there's an area near the road that's pretty flat, and then you may need to selectively remove some of the trees at the bottom of the slope. But again, we haven't done the studies to determine that.
So you'd go out and look at that and confirm, right? We're not being asked to make a decision other than to say, go forward and get us options.
Studies, correct.
Would
Okay.
someone purchase the old water tower site and put a house there? You're right next to the Verizon or the CenturyLink maintenance building.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why we want to hire a realtor, because we're not realtor experts, but we want to find out if it's a marketable site, and then how much would the city be able to sell it for, and then bring that information back to the council.
So that's what you're asking the council to decide, is to give you the okay to go ahead and start that process, see if you can market them and what you may be able to get for them, and then bring it back when you have that data.
Correct.
Okay, do you need a formal motion?
The motion is.
All right, council, is there any other discussion? All right, I move we authorize staff to solicit quotes from qualified professionals to work with the staff to research the possible sale of 4 city-owned parcels located at 6735 Smithtown Road, 6370 Maple Drive, 8420 County Road 11 Victoria Drive, and the northwest corner of 81st Street and Trillium, and direct staff to bring back options to the council on marketing the sale of these parcels. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Pat. Next item, Victoria City subordination. Dana?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This evening before you is a subordination request. These types of requests are not unusual. They're actually fairly routine when it comes to cities. A subordination agreement for the public purpose, for the public's edification, is that the agreement changes the priority interests in a mortgaged property from one party who has priority to another who would otherwise be subordinate if it were not for the subordination agreement. In 2008, so a little background here, the city entered into a development planning contract and a contract for private development, which was later amended and then retitled Development Agreement. As part of those approvals, the city issued a TIF note and entered into an assignment of subordination of the development agreement in connection with the developer's financing for the improvements. The request is coming before you now because the developer is in the process of refinancing his loan with a different bank, and he is placing the TIF note as collateral against this new loan. The developer continues to be liable for all payments on the loan, and the city continues to have no obligation. There is no material change to what was contemplated in the original agreement. This time, however, the TIF note is being used as collateral. The developer previously kept his interest in the TIF note. With that, staff's asking council to approve the resolution and the collateral assignment of subordination of the development agreement, TIF note, and planning contract.
Mr. Vos, do we lose any of our legal rights? That worries me, but I don't know if I have cause to be worried or not.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, so my colleague Jenny Bolton is your bond counsel, and she's reviewed all these documents, so I don't want to speak for her, but you've asked me to, so I will. Her answer is no, that this does not impact the city's legal rights at all.
All right, so approving this, if they weren't, we would still have the same ability as if we didn't approve it as far as trying to recover for the public?
Correct.
Okay. Council, questions?
Mr. Vos, is this the same thing we just did with Victoria Flats in December?
Mayor and Council, now you're asking me to speculate more than I want to.
Okay.
I believe you're correct. I mean, that's my recollection, but I think generally speaking, that's what we did. But did we do the exact same thing? I don't want to be
Okay.
saying that, but generally, yes.
Okay, I move we approve resolution 2019 with the appropriate numbers filled in, a resolution approving collateral assignment and subordination of development agreement, TIF note, and planning contract. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, unfinished business, 8A. Ann?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight before you for consideration is a draft ADA transition plan. Actually, it's not the plan that I'm going to be seeking information on. Rather, as part of the draft ADA transition plan, the city is required to have a public comment period that staff would then take that information and also then incorporate it into the draft ADA transition plan, and then that would come back before you after a month. The ADA was enacted back in the 90s, and as part of Title II, the ADA plan pertains to programs, activities, and services that are offered by public entities, meaning the City of Victoria. The plan has several requirements within it. One, doing a self-evaluation of facilities in right-of-way, meaning sidewalks, trails, also parks, accesses to parks, parking lots, facilities. So we look at all of those within the plan. We need to include a schedule and a budget within the plan, contact information, and designate an ADA coordinator, and which we've been doing is utilizing ADA design standards as we work on construction projects, whether they're private or public, that have some element of public in them, such as sidewalks that front houses. We also are required to have a grievance procedure, but the big part tonight that I'm asking you for is to have a public outreach comment period, and we're looking for a 30-day comment period. And again, we would take that information that we received from the public comments and incorporate those into the transition plan, and in April come back to you with a complete plan for your consideration, discussion, and certainly if there's components tonight that you have questions on, I'm happy to answer them or gather more information for you. So,
All right, thank Ann. Comments? Council?
I'm very interested in seeing a projection at some point in the near future, say in the next few months, that shows what the projections are for the city's costs, especially in the next 5 years, and potentially in the next 10 years. But the first 5 years, we should really try to get a handle on that as soon as possible.
Yep.
Because that's going to affect next year's budget.
correct. And we within the plan itself, we have identified cost and potential costs associated with 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out. The plan's really designed to be utilized as a guide. So some of the things that we've already implemented through the past several years is when we go in and do a street project, for example, we will look at the intersections and the pedestrian crossings and upgrade those as part of the street project. We also are doing that with trails. If there's a trail intersection, we're making those improvements. A lot of things are fairly easy things, from signage in buildings to door handles, and to making sure that some of the smaller things that people would just not look at if you didn't have a disability from sight or walking. So those are the things that we evaluate in each of our locations, whether it be City Hall, all of our public parks. And so we're trying to incorporate those into projects and maintenance, which should limit our exposure, especially in the short term. But those are the things that we're looking at incorporating over the long period of time that we'll have this plan.
So last time we talked about this, I know it came up with Victoria Flats in that it doesn't meet the ADA, if I remember right, it doesn't meet the ADA standards for the sidewalk. Is there something in here, and have you considered how we make sure that we get the right information in front of the Planning Commission so that we don't make those mistakes again?
Correct, and we are utilizing that ADA plan that was put together for the entire downtown, and that will be included with our plan. We are internally looking at how to prioritize and how we're going to look at making those improvements downtown. One of the challenges that we have, especially in downtown, is you have your streets already there, so your elevations are there, so we can't really make a lot of changes to elevations when buildings go in because they're already set. So one of the things that we need to look at internally is making sure that we've got an accessible route if something can't be completely ADA compliant.
Right, but I think my question is really going to when the Planning Commission looks at designs for new development, how do we make sure that this is part of what a checklist or however we want to do it, to make sure the Planning Commission knows when they're looking at designs, we got to make sure that they're ADA compliant from the get-go.
Yep, and
that's really the core issue for me to how does that tie into this? Is that separate from this entirely? We just deal with the Planning Commission?
Yeah, generally the ADA compliance standards are pretty technical, I would say, from a construction standpoint. You know, so our engineering staff are usually the ones that are as part of the plan review, and then also out into the field are really the experts that are dealing with that piece. I think in general you can have the Planning Commission look at making sure we have accessibility within the project, but when it gets down to the technical standards of implementation, I think that's really when
So
you.
this was just missed on Victoria Flats, is that what I'm hearing you tell me?
I don't think it was missed, Carrie. Do you want to talk to it?
We don't need to go into all of the details. I just know that before you said that, as it's designed, doesn't meet the standards, and I want to make sure that we don't repeat that mistake, right? But we can. I don't think we have to go into that tonight.
I thought it was just that the pots on the sidewalk were what was out of.
Right, but when it was designed and reviewed, nobody caught that, right? So
Did
the
they
build.
put the pots on there? Well, but the sidewalk itself, I think is okay. It's just the pots.
Yeah, and we've had some more discussions with our people that were working on that plan, so we're getting some clarification on actually a lot of the areas downtown to make sure that we're addressing each and every one of those areas that were identified in that.
To me, it's almost a process question to make sure that the right process is there to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you need from us tonight?
I make a motion to open a 30-day comment period on March 26, 2019 through April 24, 2019 to allow for a public input on City of Victoria's draft ADA transition plan.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Ann. Okay, that was 8A. For those that tuned in late, 8B was moved to the beginning of the meeting to help accommodate parents getting back to their kids. So the next item now is 8C, steep slope. Pat?
Back in March 11th this year, the City Council directed staff to amend the draft ordinance about the steep wooded slopes to reflect flexibility and that could be achieved through a PUD process. Staff made some changes to the ordinance and bringing it back to the City Council for review. Again, just the main reason why the staff is recommending this steep slope wooded ordinance is to preserve the natural amenities that exist in Victoria, Lake Town Township. really it's what differentiates us between a lot of the other suburbs around Minneapolis and St. Paul. As you heard earlier tonight, people like and love Victoria because of the natural amenities, and that's what this is, the intent of this ordinance is trying to preserve. We do have a tree preservation ordinance, but that is not as useful of a tool if you're trying to preserve the rolling hills. Going through here, currently our shoreline ordinance protects bluffs that are defined at 18% or greater and steep slopes at 12% or greater that are 1,000 feet from any lake. Steep slopes that are being proposed are 18% or greater with a high tree density. We presented a staff report or a report that kind of helps you determine what an 18% slope is. They recommend that grade 4 farmland is soils that have moderate limitations and have moderate slopes, which they define 4 to 10%. Grade 5 would be soils that are not suitable for continuous cultivation with moderate to steep slopes between 8 and 20%. And then grade 6 are soils that are generally unsuited for cultivation and are limited largely to pasture and sparse woodland with moderate to steep slopes, and that's 8 to 20%. And that's what you'll find in a lot of these farms that were not able to farm those steep slopes. They left them to be pasture, and then those are the areas that have the significant trees. Chaska, Lake City, Minnetonka, and Bloomington have steep slope ordinances. Chaska has had this similar provision for the last 20 years, protecting its character-defining features. Hoyson and Kogler did a study to show the steep slope wooded areas make up 5.4% of the developable land in the west and south growth areas. This is the western growth area. The areas highlighted in red are the steep wooded slopes. The areas highlighted in yellow are the steep slopes but don't have any woods. Those wouldn't be protected under the proposed ordinance. This is the south growth area. Again, the red is the steep wooded slopes areas. To give the city council and the public an idea of what an 80% grade is, Hoyson and Kogler went out and looked at some of the steep slopes that are near roads, main roads. This one's on Egler Boulevard, County Road 10. It's looking up to the north. It's a yellow slope, so it doesn't have the historic woods, but it gives you an idea of what a steep slope is at 18% or greater. The other example that I included in the packet is Hawks Point Lane. If you drive up that road, the roadway, it's a pretty steep road, but it's at 8%, so the 18% would be double that. The recommended motions are the motion to adopt ordinance number 427, amending chapters 105 and 109 of the Victoria City Code regarding steep wooded slopes, and a motion to approve resolution 2019, a resolution authorizing summary publication of the ordinance.
So, thank you, Pat. After the council last discussed this, and part of what we said is, hey, we'll use a PUD process, and we're going to exclude the 2 neighborhoods that have already come in front of the council. The more I thought about this, the more I kind of think that maybe we need to step back. There's no immediate need that's facing us right now. With Dana just coming on board, looking at a bunch of ordinances, I agree with the concept and what you're trying to do, but I think a better approach, instead of pushing this through where we now have three separate ordinances, I almost think unless there's something that requires this to be done now, I would almost like to step back. I don't think we should go to the PUD process unless we develop like guidelines that the Planning Commission can use to evaluate any of these projects. And I'm still concerned that if we have this ordinance, we now have 3 different ordinances, and I'm concerned about differences in definitions, where one begins, the other one ends. Plus, I know from being on the Lakes and Water Quality Committee, they were already talking about the shoreland ordinance and making changes there. It seems to me, unless there's a pressing need to do this, we should step back, let Dana work with the staff, come up with a holistic approach to both the shoreland ordinance with the recommendations that come out of the Lakes and Quality Committee, take what the work you've done here and wrap it into the tree preservation ordinance, because that also needs work. And so we end up with two ordinances clearly defined as to one leaves off, the other takes over. And all of the issues that we have as far as preserving not only trees and stop the clear cutting, but also preserving the topology. So a lot of the work you've done, we just wrap it into the other one. So I'd like to ask the council, see what you consider, see if you have any thoughts on that, or if you want to move forward with what we've done before. I think if we wait and take the holistic approach, the PUD shouldn't, I don't want to see that become the rule. And Mr. Vogt, you even said earlier, that should really be the exception. We should get away from everything going to a PUD. I'd rather see, as part of these ordinance, develop the guidelines that pretty much set the rules. And only if you can't get a decision and we've got guidelines so the Planning Commission has clear guidance, only then do we go to a PUD process. And I think that's missing. I just don't think we're there yet. And so I would like to suggest to the council that we give this back to staff, let them take that holistic view for all three of this proposed ordinance and the other two ordinances, and come back with two ordinances that combine all of the things we need, and make sure that there's no disconnects between them. So I think you guys see what I'm thinking here. Comments, council?
I agree completely. I think we should step back, because we're still trying to resolve our tree ordinance that we have, and now we're trying to add this in, and then I think it needs to be looked at a little more. I don't think we should have to push this through.
I agree, but I agree and disagree, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
This, I agree that we should look at all three ordinances and try to come up with a holistic approach, but I think it will take quite a while based on how long we've looked at this steep slope ordinance. If that's any indication of the complexity, we would take months to, maybe 6 months, to analyze the three and mesh them together. So I think at least the first step is to get this steep slope ordinance out there, because it puts a marker out there for developers that they're going to have to negotiate with us on steep slopes that are full of trees. It just puts a marker out there. The process is imperfect with the PUD. I agree that it really needs to be tightened up, but this we could get out there right away. It puts a flag out there that we want to negotiate. Do not touch those slopes until we decide how to settle this. And you know, the history of the city is, I've been here since 2002, and hills disappear and trees disappear.
And that's what we want to stop.
And basically, the tree preservation ordinance doesn't seem to be working, probably because we can't police it. But this would be a step in the right direction, very imperfect. And I am suspicious of using the PUD all the time. That's the reason I thought we rewrote our zoning codes. But as imperfect as it is, the city needs to retain negotiating power. And I think this would do it. We've made exceptions for the people that have already gotten into the development process. So, and the way this thing is written, it allows flexibility. It says, it is the intent of this provision to allow reasonable use of private property by encouraging flexible design of development so as to avoid disturbance to the steep wooded slopes. But that's the old language. Now it's saying, notwithstanding, the city may relax the foregoing requirement in a planned unit development which incorporates a flexible design, avoiding disturbance of steep wooded slopes to the greatest extent practicable. So it leaves the door open for flexibility. So I'm sorry,
No, I understand. Real quick, Dana, Mr. Vogt raises a valid point. My assumption is if we approve this tonight, we can still give staff direction to go through this process, bring us back the two ordinances like I was suggesting. And at that point, my assumption is we could rescind those three ordinances and replace them with the 2 after you've had a chance to go through it. And to Mr. Vogt's point, it allows the city to actually kind of put a placeholder, for lack of a better way to describe it. If the council were to do that, in Mr. Vogt's, I'm assuming that's fine because we can change ordinances as we see fit. If the council were to do that, Dana, without holding you to it, how long do you think it would take to go back and take that holistic approach?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'll probably look over at Pat. I'm tending to agree with Councilmember Vogt that it is a several-month process to take a holistic view, view of all 3 ordinances.
So I think when we've talked before, this is something, the council's going to look at this at the strategic planning session. There's no immediate need. Would it be fair to say that we would be able to have that holistic view done in this year?
I think that's fair to say. I look at our community development director to validate that.
So we've been working on the shoreline ordinance already with the Hoyson and Kogler, so that's almost done. It's really looking at the landscaping and tree preservation ordinance together and reviewing that as well. So that's, again, a 7-8 month process.
So I'm convinced by Mr. Vogt's argument. This way at least puts a stake in the ground and kind of stops some of our immediate concerns, and it gives staff time to look at this because we've got a lot of ordinances we have to look at. Mr. Gregory, you haven't had a chance to weigh in here yet.
Just so I'm clear, you're talking about approving this with the intention of changing it later.
Right, because I'm still concerned about it's not broad enough. We haven't fixed the tree preservation ordinance, and we know there's shoreline ordinance.
Make sure I was clear on what we
Right.
were doing.
Right.
But I have a question and a comment. Question because I promised a resident that I'd ask the question. On the map with all the red on it, that map was produced, I'm assuming, based on a satellite imagery of areas that look like they have trees. They may or may not have trees. It might be shrubs. Would that be an accurate?
That is correct. It's taken from an aerial. It's supposed to give you an idea of how much of the
So just
areas.
because it has red doesn't necessarily mean it actually qualifies as substantial tree.
That is correct. And then we also included that definition that it's got to have a 10-foot drop. So a lot of these areas may not have that 10-foot drop as well.
Just because you have red on your property doesn't necessarily mean that we can't touch that. Okay, that was the question. The comment was just looking at the revised language, but and this is probably immaterial at this point because it looks like we're going to kind of ignore that. But just the revised language, we still have very rigid language in that first sentence. They shall remain in their natural state. That was very rigid. And then the second sentence, we talk about the PUD, but at some point at another council may go the direction of we are not going to do any more PUDs unless it's absolutely, really, really raise the bar on doing PUDs. So if we were to approve the language as written and another council would say, we're not going to touch PUDs, that would really draw a hammer down on landowners that would be stuck with it's going to stay in their natural state. Would that?
Yeah. And I just had one more question too. With the steep wooded slopes, it says it all in here, but you're saying high density wooded steep. So because it could be a steep slope with a couple of trees on it. So, but you were actually saying high density where you'd have a ton of trees.
Right. So it's the high density is defined term in our ordinance that talks about the percentage of trees in a given area.
A quantitative way to measure
Correct.
it. Okay.
And what is that?
Right
Just
here,
briefly.
it just says steep.
What is the definition of high density slope?
Let me find it.
Yeah, do you have that?
So high tree density means a parcel of land containing 6 or more total caliper inches of significant trees per 1,000 square feet of land.
Significant, meaning, what is significant?
So significant trees, they have to be 8 inches or more in diameter.
Oh, so you're just saying that a tree that's 8 inches or more?
Right, within a 1,000 square foot area of land. So it's got to meet the elevation change, and it's got to be an area that has more than one tree per 1,000 square feet of land.
So it's a defined term, and you have to go out there and actually measure and see how many trees you have in a marked-off area, basically.
Correct.
Right? But it is a quantitative, what I'm hearing you say, it's a quantitative measurement.
That
So
we
it's-
have in the ordinance already.
All right, so a defined term. Is that?
I don't know.
Mr. Gregory, did you get your questions answered?
I'm good. It looks
Okay.
like we're headed down the right path.
I just, excuse me for disagreeing. Your instincts are right. I think we're all right. I just think it'll take a while to do this right, to mesh the three together. And we shouldn't sit here for 6 months with nothing. It'd be good to have something and a basis for negotiation if there is a serious development and the issue comes up.
But I think it seems as if we're all in agreement. We'll put this in place now, and we can come back to it. Right? Did I misunderstand what the council's looking at?
Maybe we should add that language to it with the intention of changing it within the next 6 months.
All right, let me pause for a second. Jacob, I'm sorry, before the council started to discuss, and I forgot that you wanted to address. If you would, be brief, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Again, Jacob Steen with Larkin Hoffman, and we represent the Hunt Club. I do want to express my appreciation for the council's willingness to listen to our opinions and to consider all of the changes that you have. We were hopeful coming out of the last meeting that we would have some changes that move us in the right direction. Unfortunately, I think that there were actually some changes that were missed that were recommended by the council, including the addition of "to the extent possible" in the first sentence. Unfortunately, without that addition, this effectively acts as a moratorium on any development or touching of steep slopes. The addition of the PUD language, while it does look to be a lot more flexible, as this council knows, the council has expressed a strong discouragement of PUDs in the future. So effectively, what we have is a meaningless language because of that policy being in place, unless those policies are to change. And we do believe, as I've mentioned at the last meeting and probably previous council meetings, that the city has these authorities in place. But Councilmember Vogt raised some very excellent concerns about enforcement. And out of that discussion, the council has directed staff to look at the tree preservation ordinance. But the fact that it's not being preserved now begs the question that if you adopt this language today, why would the council expect that this would be enforced as well if our current preservation ordinance isn't in place? Ultimately, right now, this is going to exempt all of the development that's in the hopper. So any of the developments that is currently contemplated is going to be exempt. So again, it begs the other question, why are we doing this now, and what are we even accomplishing if all of the existing development is out? And I think, what we've heard is that this was really driven, the reason why we're seeing this now and the reason for the rush is this was driven by the outgoing interim city manager. And we now have a new permanent manager who's exceptionally competent, and we agree that the better approach is to table this agreement instead of effectuating what is effectively an interim moratorium or a moratorium on any development, and we can go back and do exactly what you've
What were those words that you, excuse me, what were those words?
To the extent practical?
Did you forget about that, or did you intentionally do?
No, we included that in the second sentence at the very end where it says greatest extent practical.
So if you look at the way it was, the recommendation was that it was added to the first sentence, because then it at least provides some flexibility. Without adding that to the first sentence, this precludes all development.
Let me stop you there. Bob, would you agree?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I agree with Mr. Steen's characterization of how the first and second sentences work, yeah.
Okay, so
I don't think I agree that was the direction the council gave. I think this reflects the direction given, but I agree with his interpretation of what the language means.
Okay, so I thought when the council discussed it, we wanted that language up front. Am I?
First sentence.
Right. Was that what we wanted?
Yeah, that's where I thought we were headed. We added that to the first
Mr.
sentence.
Vogt, do you remember?
I would tend to agree that the intent is to make this workable and not to cause a moratorium for 6 months or a year. We want to make it work, but we want to put the developers on notice that we're serious. So is it possible to change the wording to the greatest extent possible, steep slopes, blah, blah, and then take it out in the second sentence?
We can make that motion and make that change right here. Mr. Vos, is that correct? We could make that motion here. You can then change it. We can still publish it and approve it.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, we'd have to change the document, but you could act on it now and then sign it after it's been changed. Sure.
Okay, so I want to make sure I got the language right. We want to add in the beginning to the greatest extent possible. Is that correct?
At the end of the first sentence.
Possible.
Well, Mayor and Council, if I may, it sounds maybe silly, but the word practicable, I think, was chosen for a reason as opposed to possible.
Practicable.
Given limitless resources, anything is possible.
Got it.
So practicable incorporates.
Practicable.
Practicable incorporates.
Yeah, but that's a lot harder to pronounce.
But it's that's a good word.
Yeah.
To the greatest extent practicable at the end of the first sentence, and then we're going to strike what language?
You get straight to the greatest extent practical at the end of the second sentence.
But that says practical, we want practicable in the first sentence.
I think you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I think you want it in both senses. So, I think we're just adding it again in the first sentence.
All right, I'm just trying to make sure that we get the motion right. We add to the greatest extent practicable in the first sentence, and we just leave the rest, and we should be fine.
Well, do we change practical to practicable?
Yeah, practicable. Isn't that what I said?
So we're consistent, as we always try to be.
Mayor and Council, that's a pronunciation problem on my part. I meant the same word. However, we're going to say I think it's practicable, and I think that should be the word we're using in the first sentence, just like we're using it in the second sentence.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. So I move that we modify the language in the ordinance as drafted to include what we've just discussed, which is to add in the language to the greatest extent practicable at the end of the first sentence. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. It's now amended. Jacob, I think that's...
Mr.
Any
Mayor.
other final comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, if we could also add in language intending to bring it back, I think that would be very helpful for our client.
That's what we've talked about. So I think that's the intent. So I'm going to go ahead and modify this motion, Council. If you disagree, so note. I move that we adopt ordinance number 427, amending chapters 105 and 109 of the Victoria City Code regarding steep wooded slopes until such time as we bring back a new ordinance with a holistic approach at some point in the future. Is there a second?
Mayor,
Yep.
can I interrupt you?
Yep.
Sorry. Chapters 109, it should be actually Appendix C. Appendix C instead of Chapter 109. So it's amending chapters 105
and Appendix
C.
All right, so there's an error there.
Thank you.
Yep. Let me do that again.
Can we make the sentence a separate sentence?
Sure. We'll do it that way. So I'm going to do three motions here. The first motion to adopt ordinance number 427, amending chapters 105 and Appendix C of the Victoria City Code regarding steep wooded slopes. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion carries. I move that we approve the resolution 2019- with the appropriate numbers, a resolution authorizing summary publication of ordinance 427 by title and summary. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion carries. Last motion, I move that we direct staff to work on taking a holistic approach to the three ordinances with the intention to try to combine them down to two. The three ordinances being the shoreline ordinance, the 18-degree slope ordinance and the tree preservation ordinances, and bring that back to the council as soon as practicable. Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. See?
Mayor?
I got to use that.
Terribly sorry to, I want a hole in my head more than I want to talk more about this ordinance, but I think the language about bringing it back, just so we're clear about where that would go, I think that would go in section 5 of the ordinance. In other words, section 5 of the document, that was intended, right? That was part of.
Correct. We should put that into the ordinance, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think if that was the intent of the will of the council, I think that belongs in section 5. Section 5 is the section that indicates when this ordinance becomes effective. It would be appropriate to say in that same section.
So another motion?
This will be reconsidered when, I'm not sure what the language is, but this ordinance that you're have adopted now would be reconsidered at such time as the staff brings back the comprehensive look at all of these ordinances. That would be in section 5.
So we need a motion to insert that third motion into section 5?
Mayor, that would be appropriate, yeah.
Okay, I move that we insert the language from the third motion, subject to minor edits by the city attorney, into section 5 of ordinance 427, chapter 105, appendix C. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Did we get that right, Bob?
Yes, Mayor, you did.
All right, tongue twister. The Downtown West, Pat?
The development team for the Downtown West is requesting a 2-week extension to the 4-month exploratory period that was established in the preliminary development agreement. The preliminary development agreement gave the development team 4-month period, and that 4-month period ends tomorrow on March 26th. They would like a 2-week extension that would go to April 9th. They plan on bringing back their feasibility studies, their market studies, at your meeting on April 8th. One of the main reasons that they would like the extension is because they had Anderson Companies join their development team, and they want to make sure that they're also part of the project.
So,
Mayor, in the interest of being open and transparent, I'd like to pull up a satellite image of where I live.
Sure.
My home is located at 1885 Steiger Lake Lane, which is between here and the 13 acres. And I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that, which could be a potential conflict. I've had extensive conversations with Attorney Vos, and based on those conversations, I don't believe I have a conflict. The city has owned that property for more than a decade, so I've been bracing for a busier road for more than 10 years, so I know it's coming at some point, and in my opinion, I don't believe I have a conflict. I'm looking for questions, comment from the developer, staff, council.
I don't think you have any conflict.
I don't either.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The only comment I have is, look, let me be clear. I don't care if we approve this, but it seems like, what's the point? It's only 2 weeks, right? Nothing's going to happen in 2 weeks anyways. Why do we even need to extend the agreement?
For legal reasons, it was 90 days. We gave them 90 days.
But even if it expired, so what?
I think there's people, Mayor, I think there's people out there that are also interested in the property, so we probably should be aware that we should keep things tight.
Well, if I remember when we talked about it, look, we don't need to spend a lot of time. When we talked about it, it's not an exclusive agreement anyways. So it's almost like whatever.
I think they just want to know that we're okay with it.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, so unless there's further discussion, I move we approve a 2-week extension to the preliminary development agreement for Downtown West until April 9th, 2019. Is there a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, motion carries unanimously.
Mayor, I was just wondering, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I was wondering if there was any comments from the developers as to why one of the partners changed, or is that none of our business?
Or is it a new partner added? Just added to the team?
Exactly. So United Properties is still a partner?
Okay, if we're going to have a conversation, it needs to come up.
Let's save it for
Okay.
Okay. In case you didn't hear that, the comment was we're going to save that for when this is on the council, and we'll talk about the whole project. So for those that couldn't hear. All right, reports of the city manager. Dana.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there are 2 reports that were provided in your agenda packet under correspondence. The fire activity for the month of February, as well as the sheriff's report for the month of February. And then just to note, earlier this evening, for the public's edification, during our workshop, we did previously have scheduled our fire department annual report, and because we ran long on the commission interviews, our fire chief, Chief Hager, will be back at a future date to be scheduled to present that annual report to council.
Perfect. Thank you, Dana. Bob?
Mayor, I have no report, thank you.
Mr. Vogt?
No report.
Judy?
I do. Now that I'm on the water quality committee where I sit, they have made up a booklet practically of the multi-jurisdictional review bodies and a list of authorities and the responsibilities of all the watershed district and the lakes, and we are basically a citizen outreach and education committee regarding our lakes, wetlands, and buffer zones. And I just wanted to mention, now that the snow is melting and people are getting anxious to get out to their yards and work, you need to take into consideration that there are permits to get rid of your trees and your weeds, and you can't be going around just chopping trees down in the wetland buffer zones. So make sure you check with the city first. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Gregory?
No report.
I've got 2 things. Very quickly, for those of you, I've spoken about this a couple of times before, but I just want to let you know that Commissioner Workman and I, even before I took the oath of office, started working with the residents on Zumbra, trying to get some maintenance work done up in Three Rivers Park to help them with the flooding problem. That maintenance work was done just a couple of weeks ago. The real test will be as the ice goes out on the lakes and that water drains, as to whether or not there's hope, and it's speculation, we don't know yet because it's too early, but there's hope that the water level on Zumbra may go down to historical levels, which is about 2 feet below where it is now. So that took a lot of work. There were a lot of the DNR, the Three Rivers Park, the Watershed District, the county, the city itself, and others. A lot of people got together and got this maintenance work done. We're all kind of anxious and sitting on pins and needles. Hopefully this will mitigate and if we're really lucky, eliminate the flooding problems up in Lake Zumbra. So knock on wood. I will tell you that for 20 years, nothing has been done, but at least we've got this project done. And so we're hopeful. The other thing I wanted to let you know, I've mentioned this before, Commissioner Workman and I worked with Bo Carlson, who heads up Three Rivers Park, and other entities. Tracy Paradise is her name. She was working with Three Rivers Park to get a competition bike trail, and I don't have all the details. We'll get details and we'll get it out to you, but a competition bike trail for Carver Park Preserve, and that was approved by the Carver Park Board last week. We are going to get, and again, don't quote me on the details because I don't have them in front of me. I seem to recall it was like a 10-mile single lake competition bike trail that will go through Carver Park Preserve. That opens up a lot of possibilities that I'm going to ask the council to look at, because we can become, if you will, a logistical hub to support that. They're looking for statewide and potentially some national competitions on that trail. I think this is a great opportunity, and I've spoken with Bo Carlson and Commissioner Workman. We have lots of opportunities. One of the things that we talked about, and I'm going to ask the council to consider, is taking the old public works site and potentially, because it's on top of an old dump, turning that into, if you will, a trailhead for parking, and then potentially connecting our trail system into this, and, if you will, becoming a logistical base for this. So I think this has great opportunities. They were working on that for a while, and I'd like to thank all of the entities involved that helped support this. Now that it's approved, it's real, we can start talking about that. One final note, this hasn't come up, and it just dawned on me the other day, especially now that people are actually coming outside their homes. The whole thing about we used to use the public works site for yard waste. We need to, I think, quickly as a council I believe that we need to come up with an interim solution for Victoria residents only on a fee basis, or at least some sort of way to pay for it, to give spring cleaning people a place where they can bring their yard waste. And maybe it's the public works site, maybe it's a rec center, I don't know. But I think we need to look at that as quickly as possible, get staff to look at it and see if we can find some solutions to that, because it's not going to be long before people are going to be looking to do things. And I'm almost afraid that this fell off the table, so to speak. We need to kind of revive this quickly if we're going to be able to do something for our residents. So those, sorry, I said 2 items. There were actually 3. I apologize. With that, I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned.